Okay, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Please, now we're going to start. Thank you so much. Wow, what a powerful morning, yes? What a powerful moment to have more than... Okay, Maria, darling, I love you. We're going to start now. What a powerful message to have more than 140 companies, 30 of them, here to say loud and clear that they are making a promise to the Hispanic community. This afternoon will be devoted to crafting our story and advancing our narrative solely. We do not, Hispanics, we do not have a reality issue. We're beautiful. We're powerful. We saw it, right? So we do not have a reality issue. We have a perception problem that we're going to try to start fixing today. So now what we all have to do is make sure that we understand that we have to own our narrative and we have to control our perception. So this afternoon will be discussed some of the key elements involved in perception change, from identity, data, storytelling. We will discuss with the key industries that we need on board, like tech, media, marketing, and the creative industry, because we need to be the owners of our story, and for that, we need a narrative. And we cannot have a joint narrative if we don't have a solid pool of data and insights to create our business case and educate ourselves and others about our own power and contributions. The source of the data that we use at We're All Human is given by an incredible organization called Latino Donor Collaborative that has been referenced a couple of times today. We need to know what the issues are that are key to us to be speaking about, and we need to push together, and we need the stories and the channels to make our narrative real. So we presented today to all of you, earlier this morning, a platform, the Hispanic Star, to showcase our contributions and unite us all under the same framework and mindset. Hispanic Stars, because that's what we are, stars ready to shine. The Hispanic Star is an umbrella which all of us can contribute from different places and sectors, but we need all of you to own it. Be very loud and visible about it so that we can make it come alive in 2020. We need the Hispanic Star to be famous. The Hispanic Star is the first of a three-step approach to generate systemic change for the community, as instructed and guided by another giant of the Hispanic community, Sol Trujillo, who could not be here today. But he sends his kind instructions. So here we go. The first step of the systemic change that we're going to try to do together is inspiration, awareness, what we're doing today, the Hispanic Star. The second is empowering us by educating every Hispanic and non-Hispanic about their contributions through data. Number 3 will be action, bringing real change to life, bringing real salary raises for all, bringing more people inside cabinets once and for all. We're All Human will be laser focused on changing our perception because we believe that 2020 will be the year for Hispanics. So we will devote most of our attention to the campaign. This is an invitation for all of you to campaign with us. Join forces because we need you all, companies, media, individuals, schools, young people, everyone. Our team here in yellow scarves, if you can see them, haven't they done an incredible job in putting this together? Like, honestly. And can we give it another round of incredible applause to the more than 20 volunteers, young people under 30 that are here volunteering for all of us here today. And for all the time and the effort and the time donated for people like Emma and her company that are managing and giving pro bono the event management of this organization. So it runs off like a clock. It's because people like Emma have put that together. So all of the team members in a yellow scarf are available for you to talk to them about being part of the campaign. And again, this is not a We're All Human campaign. This is everybody's campaign. So please feel the ownership. So I would like to thank again our supporters for their financial contributions. They made us being here possible. Unilever sponsoring the luncheon with the bubbles that we saw for some of us. And let's be clear, we're going to invite the campaign a lot of Hispanics so that we can make it work. But we need the same amount of non-Hispanics in the table being allies to actually make this a reality. So I cannot be more proud and lucky to have one of the greatest leaders of today's corporate America here with us, a genius, a marketing and business visionary that has transformed from the weather forecast to IBM Watson to now Nielsen. Please welcome David Kenny.
I can't use the podium. I got to walk around. I've got 10 minutes, and we're going to do the panel. But there's some things that there's something I really want each of you to work on. So this is a homework assignment. I'm going to talk a little bit about the census. Let me give you some background. I was named the Chief Executive Officer of Nielsen on December 2nd, 2018. So 1 year ago this week, I was in week 2. I had found the bathroom, which was good. And I was reviewing our plans for, because we had to put a budget together for 2019, and I was with our data science team, and Christine Pierce, who's our lead demographer, was telling me about the increased budget to correct the wrong census. And I'm like, well, why don't they make it right? And she said, well, there's a slim chance, but at that point, the Secretary of Commerce, even though we had been down there and shared data, had a proposal to ask a question about citizenship on the census. And the census is really important because everything we do at Nielsen ladders up to it. So when we do the ratings, which everyone knows, we build a sample that reflects the census, and that sample then is laddered up to the census, and that's how we know how many people watch. We don't talk to every person, we talk to a sample. Same thing when we know what's going on in market share, where to build stores. So if the census was wrong, everything would be wrong. And so normally when there's ever been a change made to the census, it's done after years of testing to know what would happen. And here it was just being arbitrarily put out there for maybe not even the right reasons. And so there was a lot of fuss about that. But I think there was also a feeling like, well, the Commerce Department wants to do it. It's an executive order. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. That's 5-4. We know how that's going to go. So, let's just be prepared to fix it. And I said, let's be prepared to fix it. But I don't think it's ever good to let things be wrong. And if you have any chance at all to make things right, you should. So we did write an amicus brief to the Supreme Court. And there were a lot in there about civil liberties and voting rights. And that wasn't necessarily appealing to everyone. We were run about money and about the economics of that. And we also did an editorial in the New York Times, which I think really helped steer it. And in fact, it was 5-4, but 5-4 against the citizenship question, which I think was really awesome. And it shows if something's wrong, speak up. There are people who will listen. And if you've got any power or privilege at all, and a lot of you do, use it to make things right. So that would be my request. On this specific question, I'm happy it's not there. But I think some of the damage was done. The perception is we don't really want to count you. But I will tell you, as a businessman, where billions, tens of billions of dollars of advertising and $1.7 trillion of consumer spend depends on this, we want everyone to be counted. If you speak to consumers, ask them to be counted. If you advertise, speak to them to be counted. If you have employees, tell them to be counted. If you go to church, speak about this topic. Wherever you are, let's make sure we have a true count, and people in this country know we want to count them and serve them. Thank you.
There. All right. There we go. Hello, everyone. I am Beth Brady, and I am the chairman of the We Are All Human Foundation's advisory board. And so I've been working with Claudia on a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. And I'm going to lead this panel of two really important experts. It's not often we can get this kind of research talent in front of us to talk about what it is we need to do to change that narrative that Claudia is talking about, and what are the important things that we should be looking at. So to my right is Billy Mann, and Billy is the founder of a research organization called Quadrant. And as we get into the discussion here, he can talk to you a little bit more about what they do. And then obviously we have David, who's the CEO of Nielsen, which of course everyone knows gathers syndicated data, evaluates that data, analyzes that data, and then obviously with his background in AI, he has a tremendous amount of expertise to offer to us today. So I'm going to get right at it here, and we're going to start with the first question. And the first question is kind of a basic founding question, which is I'd like you both, and we'll start with Billy, I'd like you both to comment or talk about why it is so important that we use data to drive the decisions that we make, to drive the campaign. So Billy, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Is this working?
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for having me. As to why it's important to have good data, I'd say it's a really basic issue, which is you want to build strategies off data, not off guesses. We don't want to hope for the best and cross our fingers that things are going to turn out well. What we're here talking about right now on this perception issue, it's a really important problem that we're trying to turn around. So we don't want to just sit here and say, well, we think the problem is caused by this, or we think it's caused by that, and then based on that guess, we're going to make another guess about what the best strategy would be, and all of a sudden we get to the end and turns out it didn't work because we were working off of an incorrect assumption. So that's at the core of everything we do, is if you want to try and solve something, you got to understand the problem that you're addressing. So we use research to go out and understand what exactly is the perception problem. And we'll talk later about a poll we're going to do, but it's going and looking, what is it that non-Hispanics think? Why do they think this? Why is this misinformation out there? Once we understand the problem, we can develop proposed strategies and then test them and ultimately see what's going to work, so that by the time you actually get to a point of doing a campaign, you've got a pretty good confidence that it's going to work.
Great. And David, you just talked about one of the biggest data sets in the world, which is census, and how important that is. But you also at Nielsen have a massive number of data sets. Can you talk to us a little bit from your perspective on syndicated data and how that is used to help make us make better campaigns, better programs, better actions?
Yeah, so our focus at Nielsen is to have one media truth, and so that everybody has one view of what everyone saw, how many times they saw it, how they engaged. And it's important to have that truth if you're going to actually make investments. So when the buyers and sellers of media are working together, having a truth set is key, because trust is the basis of the way that economy works. And again, I think it's why that truth set needs to count everyone, so that we have the whole truth when we're making those investments.
Great. So now I'd like to take it a step further and, again, ask both of you, and actually I'm going to go right back to you, David, on this one, which is now take the fact that we gather this data, take all of it, and tell the room, tell all of us how we can leverage that data to better help the Hispanics in the U.S., this whole initiative we're on.
Thank you. So I think you can get access to the data to know what Hispanics are consuming, and certainly how that relates to the full population. I think engaging in that population, particularly with what's unique about it, its youth, is essential. What I also think is that don't view campaigns to this community as one-offs. When the average age of the population, or the mode there, is 11, you've got to really plan on something that goes across the generation. So making sure every month, every quarter, every year, we're building on the past is key. And the data can also be used to build good predictions. So investing in campaigns over their total arc, I think, is especially key with this audience.
Right, thank you. Billy, I'd like you to kind of respond a little bit differently, because the work you do is custom research, and maybe you could talk to all of us about the techniques you use, and literally what you're trying to get at is the why, and maybe talk a little bit about how that pertains to the work we're doing here.
Sure. As you nailed it, it's custom research, and what that means is when we come at a problem, rather than using something that is off the shelf or a poll that's ongoing with the same questions being asked. We're sitting down and designing tailored instruments. And we have two basic principles when we approach research. One is it's important to remain cutting edge. If there are new tools, there's artificial intelligence or digital, we want to be able to use that. But the second is, despite all of the progress of AI, automation, and technology, there's one thing that is really tough to automate or replace with the greatest of widgets, and that's human creativity. And so what we try and do is marry those two things together, technology and creativity. So we sit down with a problem like this, and it's making sure that before we go out and just do a survey to say, what is the challenge, the perception gap that we have, and why is it there? You've got to ask really smart questions. So it's about doing your homework and spending weeks getting up to speed, understanding what's out there, studying the first survey that was done first among the Hispanic population in the U.S. of self-perception, and then trying to hypothesize what are the differences. And I guess a quick story as to why does it matter to do this and get it right, not guess. We were doing a project on trying to combat cyberbullying. And the hypothesis that we went into that with was cyberbullying, the biggest problem is going to be among boys online, and it's going to be based in video games and violent video games, which have become a new social media platform that teenage boys are engaging in. So then we go out and we do a national survey, and it turns out we're entirely wrong. The bigger problem is actually among girls. More girls are being bullied than boys. More girls are bullying than boys. It's not primarily happening on video games. It's happening on Instagram. So it just turns out that everything was completely inverted, and if we just worked off an assumption, the strategy we would have built for the public campaign would have been solving the wrong problem. So that's exactly what we're going to try and do here, is create custom research that gets to the why.
All right, so that brings me to talking a little bit about two pieces of research that We Are All Human Foundation is really sponsoring on behalf of all of us. And I would like to make sure that everybody in this room understands that we all have a role in getting at the right data so that we can make the right decisions. But we believe that there are two kind of big research gaps out there that we want to tackle in the coming months. And the first one is what we're calling the Top 100. Now, that's just a working name. And I'm going to let David talk a little bit about that because Nielsen is a key contributor to this research, which isn't just Nielsen. But I'll turn it over to David to kind of fill us all in on what this research is.
Well, just real briefly, it's a compilation of a lot of other pieces of research. So there's so much that's been known about the Latinx community, but everybody was looking at a different angle. You didn't have a full picture. You couldn't connect the dots. So part of what we've done is be far more open at Nielsen to contribute our data and bring in others and create a common data set. So we have one source of truth about this community. It's a deep and robust community. I do think Hispanic Star makes an enormous difference because everybody was doing their own thing from their own history. Bringing it together is going to give us one place to deeply understand this community. And I encourage everybody to take advantage of it and use it in your planning as you try to market or communicate or engage with your colleagues.
Yeah, so one thing I would like to add about this is we have a couple of other partners on this. One of them is CN, which is we're looking at behavioral, demographic, psychographic information, putting that all together. And the other one is Pew. So we have some, and obviously Nielsen. So we have some really, really important partners that are coming together. We have a publication and distribution partner that is also going to help us combine all of this, connect these dots, and create not just facts, but insights, because insights is what will get us better. The other piece of research that we are working with is with Quadrant, and that goes right at perception. So I'm going to let Billy talk a little bit about this piece of work, because one thing we know is we are trying to change perception, right? Financial empowerment, education, perception. Well, what exactly are we trying to change? So, Billy, why don't you fill everyone in on that?
Sure. I think the introduction teed it up perfectly, which is there's not a reality problem, there's a perception problem. And so it's trying to understand why is it in certain parts of the non-Hispanic community there are misperceptions and what we can do to change that. So we're going to conduct a study of about 2,500 people, a good robust size that will be among non-Hispanics. It'll be representative to the U.S. Census so that we can then cut that by pretty much any subpopulation that you want, by race, by sex, by age, by region, by political party, by income, et cetera, to try and really tease this out. And I think the key thing to understand about the study would be one word, which is action. The entire thing is designed to drive action. It's not a study that we just want to hand out to the hundreds of people here and say, this is really interesting, makes for some great airplane reading. The entire purpose of this is to try and combat a problem. And so we'll be coming back with not just insights, but recommendations of here's how we can attack this problem head on in sequential order.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, we heard at lunch how important this is, with the perceptions that are out there. And we really believe that the collective room here and those that you all know can make a huge difference. We want to make sure that we're attacking the right things. So we are a little tight on time this afternoon because we had such a wonderfully bubbly lunch. So I'm gonna end, but I'm gonna ask each of the panelists to give a final comment. David, talk a little, just real briefly about what do you think from your experience, the kind of actions we could generate here? You've done tons of this type of research, and you've seen it generate like really good action. If you have an example, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to note that his research only works if you have the right census. So again, make sure that's right. Secondly, my background's in AI. What most people don't realize about AI, when you're talking to your Google Home or your Siri or your Alexa, those are all probabilities. They're actually just really refined, smart guesses of what you're asking for and what they're going to give you. And that is the future of intelligence is actually to deal with probabilities. They only get really right if the data is super right. So I think what's going to come out of this work is that the data is going to begin to field convolutional neural nets and other ways of doing AI, and the predictions are going to build over time. So making sure that this is a foundation that grows over time so that we can use machine learning and artificial intelligence to really have future insights about a fast-growing, vibrant population is going to be key. It's not going to be one-off. It's going to be the start of a really interesting AI journey.
Billy, any final thoughts in terms of actions that you think the perception research is going to help generate?
Yeah, I think it should help lead to a campaign and a set of messages which will hopefully change the perception problem that is out there over time and allow people to understand the wonderful reality that exists.
Okay, I'd like to thank both panelists for giving us. If you have questions, we'd love to answer them. We're going to end it here so we can get back a little bit on time. But I have one final plea for all of you is these studies and the work that we do, the campaign work, requires support. We need sponsors and we need funding. And so I'm going to ask that those of you in the room that believe that this is a difference maker, please find the yellow scarves or myself or anyone, because we really need to get these studies funded. They're partially funded at this point, and we want to get them out there so that we can start taking action. So that's my plea to all of you. So thank you very much, and feel free to ask any questions at the breaks.
My name is Catherine Izaguirre, and I'm 41 years old. I am a Latina working in a male-dominated industry as a fire tech specialist at Siemens Smart Infrastructure. I've been with them for 2.5 years, and I started as a mechanical coordinator. The challenge that I've overcame as a Hispanic is feeling caught within two worlds, being a Latina, having a Hispanic culture, and an American culture. However, I've learned to embrace both cultures and intersectionalities. I've embraced it by educating people and telling them exactly who I am as a Latina. My superpower is that I can be 100% Hispanic and 100% American. This gives my double consciousness strength and resilience, and for that, I am a Hispanic star.
Mi nombre es Cecilia Navas, soy de Venezuela, tengo 5 años que vivo en este país y como muchos latinos trabajo muy duro, tengo 2 trabajos, trabajo para Amazon y trabajo para la organización no gubernamental Youth and Democracy in the Americas, donde soy una voz para los jóvenes que defienden la democracia en mi país, Venezuela. En el poco tiempo que me queda libre, lo dedico para mejorar. Tomo clases de inglés porque sé que es esencial, tanto que no tengo casi tiempo. Eso me ha costado alejarme de mi familia, tanto que mi madre murió en Venezuela y no pude estar con ella, pero sé que ella está orgullosa de lo que hoy estoy haciendo. Este país es de muchos sacrificios, pero también es de muchas oportunidades. Y una de ellas es estar hoy aquí compartiendo esta pequeña historia con ustedes. Y todos mis logros, y se lo dedico a mi bandera, que es mi inspiración, y a mi madre, que ella me veía como una Hispanic Star.
So now we're going to explore a question that's one of the burning questions, I think, in this room is how do we get more capital invested in this Hispanic community of ours, and in particular, Latin-owned businesses. Latin-owned businesses are known to contribute about $700 billion to the economy, more than 4 million Latin-owned businesses, and yet only 3% of them ever realize annual revenues in excess of $1 million. We have two astute financial professionals here with us today to help us explore that question. And I'll start with Luis Alberto Moreno, president of Inter-American Development Bank, who sees a lot of the capital flow in the other direction, right, and does a lot of investing in Latin America and South America, businesses run by people that look very much like us. So what can we learn from your experiences outside of the U.S. that we can apply here?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you, Claudia, for getting all this group together, and it's an honor to be here with my good friend Jeff. Let me begin at the outset. You mentioned it. I mean, there is 4.5 million Hispanic businesses in the U.S. Their combined turnover is about $700 billion. That makes the Hispanic businesses in the United States essentially the second largest Spanish-speaking economy in the Americas, after Mexico. Secondly, if you look at exports, Hispanic businesses, which have a natural connectivity and tissue to Latin America, export about 13% of their total sales. What you seldom see happen is how Hispanic businesses become a source of distribution into the U.S. market for businesses coming from Latin America. And I think there's a big open possibility there without a question. The fact that many of these businesses are small, I think it means also that it doesn't need necessarily to go from small business to big business, but it's really using the connectivity tissue that one can create around business-to-business relationships, and equally through electronic forms. We at the IDB are essentially a bank that provides lending, are really the premier lender to Latin American governments, but equally we have a very strong private sector arm that does this all around Latin America. So if any one of these businesses wants to do business in Latin America, we can be a source of financing. We cannot do any kind of financing in the United States. But if you look at other areas which are amazing, think about remittances. The second region of the world that receives remittances as a whole is Latin America, and this is monies coming from all of you and families like many of yours who are sending money back home. That amount is around, is getting close to 70 billion. We do an evaluation of this. We know state by state, region by region, where in regions of countries these remittances are going. And one of the more surprising things is that these remittances happen more cash to cash. There are no financial services that are operating here. There is a lot of ways that you could do a lot of development around this area, which are perfectly fit for Hispanic businesses to make the best, because they understand our markets better than anybody. So I just pose that as challenges because more than the financing itself is beginning to understand where are the opportunities.
So understanding the opportunities, maybe looking at the picture differently, right? Than just, hey, why can't I get capital? The problem is that. But on the other hand, the prior session touched on perception reality challenge, obviously, that we're also trying to address here today. Jeff, is that a part of the issue here, why maybe more Latin-owned businesses don't feel more success in terms of attracting capital?
It's a good question because I don't know. What do I press?
Press right here and just let it be. And
Let it be. It comes to me
on.
right.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you. It's a good question. It's also a puzzle for this reason. Let me go back to something Luis said. The demographics of the Hispanic community in the United States are compelling. You have a growing population, a young population, and incomes in that population that are probably growing faster than that population. I think there was a calculation a couple of years ago that the Hispanic community in the United States represented not just, I think, the second largest Spanish-speaking community in the Americas, but the number 11 economy in the world. 10 minutes left. Pardon? 8. And therefore, since 2016, it's grown from 11 to 8.
Incredible.
So that tells you something, number one. Number two, if you think about those demographics that I've just described, what does that tell you? That tells you, and this is a population that is young and digitally oriented. So what does that tell you? There's a market out there for brands oriented to these communities. There's a market out there for digital services oriented to those communities, many of which might be provided today by non-Hispanic owned businesses. There's no reason for that. You'd like to think, and go back to David Kennedy's work, you'd like to think that members of the Hispanic community are in the best position to understand the dynamics of their own community. So, to some extent, and that I may be pilloried for this, but to some extent, maybe it's a degree of a lack of self-confidence in the opportunity to really take charge and make something of the dynamics of this community. I believe, perhaps naively, that there is capital available to finance good ideas with good people that have growth potential. Some of those ideas have to be funded from venture capital firms that are always looking for good ideas that are digitally oriented or brand oriented. Some of those ideas have to be financed by local banks. No doubt there are impediments to doing so. And I can't speak intelligently to those impediments except to say one of the ways to break them down is just a consistent program of making the case to people that they're missing a big opportunity. Missing a big opportunity in business orientation, missing a big opportunity in the chance to have a profitable investment either at the debt level or at the equity level in Hispanic-owned businesses. The final point, and I'll credit Emma, who's the concierge for a lot of these activities here for it, is we talk a lot about investment of financial capital. There's also investment of human capital. People who've been successful in helping building their own business need to be engaged as mentors for people who are looking to build their own businesses. They need to be part of influencers, either in the press or at financial institutions, on the boards, on the managements, in order to make people more aware of these opportunities and connect the people from those institutions to the people who need the capital, be it human or financial. I'll stop there.
So, in what ways, and maybe we can get a little bit more specific, if it's a matter of better and more consistently, first of all, seeing opportunity, but also articulating it, right? Seeing is probably just a challenge of just looking at the world a little differently, right? Not just bemoaning the fact that capital's not available. Maybe there's other ways to get at it, or what have you, or to see the market opportunities through a larger lens that transcends just the U.S. market, right? But articulating the opportunity, what are the ways in which we come up short? I mean, because it seems like there's hard facts that sound compelling, but take us into the room where you're sitting in front of that venture capitalist. How exactly do you tell the story?
Let me begin by telling you a story. I met a man by the name of Jack Ma 12 years ago in Peru in the APEC summit that happened in Peru that time. He was, at the time, starting this company called Alibaba. And I started talking to him, and it begins with something that Jeffrey said that is so true to the Hispanic community. Is sometimes our incapacity to think big and bigger. And our kind of that mental ceilings that we are somehow grown up for a variety of reasons. And to make a long story short, I said, here we're in Peru, is one of the countries with the highest cash economy or informal labor markets, as economists like to call it. But there's this very rich body of small businesses. He says, how could they export? And before a year's time, we had set up in the Alibaba platform a way to have businesses that are small in nature from Peru exporting to China. And they're in the Alibaba platform. And it grew every year at rates of 10 and 15%. I want to take the opportunity, you can write it down. We have a platform that's called Connect Americas. It's a social media that we developed. It's got over 2 million subscribers. It has 3 verticals, one on how to finance and how to teach people to finance. It's got one on connectivity, and it's got one with huge amount of learning capabilities through massive online courses. There's many things like this because, to Jeffrey's point, what you got to use is the technologies that exist today to do the connectivity. Because being that you're small businesses, this is exactly what you need. I would also like to say that the question of mentoring is huge. We've done a lot of development programs across Latin America focusing on youth and millennials, where people that typically, there's such a skills mismatch in Latin America that you can feel from the United States because you have the privilege of having the best education system in the world. I mean, if there's anything that attracts people to this country, it's the quality of its education. And if you look at the huge skills gaps that exist, normally the way for people to begin to get jobs is the combination of providing short-term courses that last no more than, say, 6 months, combined with mentoring, and equally with internships in companies. And that's where all the change begins to happen. So there's a huge human resource gap that exists in Latin America, which is a market of close to $6 trillion. So think about that as a natural market for Hispanic business.
It's an opportunity for us, for
No
our
question.
U.S. Hispanic talent, right?
Absolutely.
Right, that has been the product of better schools and better training.
And that's why Jeffrey was mentioning something that people don't know enough. I mean, the speed with which you have Hispanic students almost doubling those who are going to universities in the United States, you are growing in the talent pool much faster than the rest of the United States. Nobody knows that. I live in Washington, and you know what happens in Washington. All the discussion on Hispanics is around immigration. The economic empowerment discussion doesn't exist. And Claudia, I think this is what a group like this needs to take on. You got to talk about the economic empowerment and begin to put the tools to be able to develop this.
And it could be that it could be, just to pick up on what Luis said, that the potential of the Hispanic market and community in the United States is one of the best kept secrets of the United States that shouldn't be a secret. That's the purpose of a conference like this. That's the purpose of a lot of things like this, of PR agencies and a lot of people who can spread that message. You may ask the question, what happens when you get into the room to raise money? First of all, it depends upon who you're talking to. Are you talking to a bank, or are you talking to an equity provider, a venture capitalist? It's a different message to both of them. But here's what's different, here's what's the same. What a bank wants to know is if they lend money to a business, they have a good chance of getting it back. and for the interest to be paid on that money, and that there's not going to be any trouble in a loan. What an equity provider wants to know is if they invest money in this business, what's the likelihood that the business is going to be successful, and how much money could they reasonably expect to make under some reasonable scenarios. Venture capital businesses are even more challenging, such as digital businesses, because you have to be prepared as an investor to watch this business, what they call burn cash, for a period of time before it gets to the point of being self-sustaining, which means you're going to face future rounds of investment in that capital, and you'd like to think that each of those rounds is going to be at a higher price than what you paid to go in your round. And you'd like to know you have the opportunity to invest. What's common between the two? What's common between the two is looking at the person who's asking for the investment and making the case for it, and having the confidence that this person is not necessarily going to be able to execute the plan the way the plan is laid out, but they're going to be able to manage the situation when the plan doesn't work out. Many of you probably heard the story about the prize fighter, Mike Tyson, says when you get into the boxing ring with an opponent, you've got a great plan for dealing with the opponent until you get the first punch in the nose. Then your plan has to change. So how do you adapt to change circumstances? And understanding how a candidate for investment deals with and has the flexibility to deal with changed circumstances, it's a judgment call, but you can figure it out from the interactions with the people concerned. Last point, because we have 3 minutes left and other people should talk, I asked the question without knowing the answer, but why aren't there more venture capital firms in the United States who are oriented towards investment in businesses created to serve the opportunity in the Hispanic community, be they Hispanic owned or not, but because success breeds success, opportunity breeds opportunity. If people see opportunity being created by these growing markets, they'll figure out a way to invest, they'll figure out a way to come up with ideas.
I believe Claudia has a question.
I just want to say, first of all, Presidente, you're a Hispanic star. We're so proud. Presidente Luis Alberto Moreno, you're a Hispanic star. We're so proud, actually, to have you here today and to be like a role model for all of us. And Jeff, thanks so much for being here. I have a question regarding small businesses and entrepreneurs, and I'm breaking all the rules. We shouldn't be speaking from the podium, but I can't stop myself. So we have... we're entrepreneurs by nature. We create small businesses. We have created jobs, 86% of every job since the Great Recession, but we actually don't scale up. We remain in 2 to 3 businesses. People actually open up a little kitchen here, a little thing there, and we actually don't have that growth. What would it take, and what have you seen in other communities that we can learn, and what would it take, Jeff, for example, for you to start, what would be the case for you to start looking at small businesses and entrepreneurs and inject capital?
It ends up being, what's the growth opportunity? How do you, now, this is where the skill set of the entrepreneur comes into question. And what I said a moment ago, does the entrepreneur have the ability to scale the business? Does the entrepreneur have the ability to scale large? I'll just recommend, at the risk of something, I'll recommend a book to you, which is the man who started Blackstone, Stephen Schwarzman, has published a book. I think it's called What It Takes.
Yep.
And if you read the book, and if you buy the book, tell him that I suggested you get some. If you read the book, you'll see at the end of the book, he has 25 lessons that he's drawn from his career. The first one of those lessons is, it's a lot easier to start something big or to pursue a big idea than it is a small idea. I can debate that for the moment, but I'm not going to for this purpose. Meaning, you're going to spend the same amount of effort trying to go big very often as you are going to small. And the problem with most entrepreneurs, forget about whether they're Hispanic or not, is they start small and they continue to think small. You always have to think as an entrepreneur, how can I make this a bigger business? What does it take? Who do I have to know And from whom do I need to get advice to get it there?
Is that born, or is it something we can learn? Have you seen business people in your own life who, the switch flipped and
Yes.
they started thinking big?
Yes, it's a question of ambition and seeing the opportunity. Frequently, look, don't forget, the U.S. economy is dominated by small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, those are people who have a great business. They're very happy with it. It's produced a good business for customers as well as investors as well as families. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it takes ambition. It takes the desire to see something larger on the horizon and to seize that opportunity. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's the formula for really building substantial businesses.
Well, it sounds to me, if I had to summarize, I mean, we are big, obviously, collectively, but we ain't seen nothing yet if we start thinking big individually and start to think about, dare ourselves. I always used to tell people I would coach in my professional career, be careful about the ceilings you create above yourself, right? More often than not, they're created by yourself. If you want to bust that ceiling, you can bust it right here in your brain. So a little bit of that can go a long way, especially in this space, too. Well, thank you so much for the wisdom and the insights. And on to the next panel.
Why do you put us after lunch? We got to get everybody going, huh? My name is Terry Arvisu. I'm the Vice President of Content for Univision Chicago. And with me today is Yuri Hong, who's the Vice President of Genomics. Did I say that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Genomics.
Ancestry DNA. Today, they are with us to talk to us a little bit from a scientific approach about the commonalities that we have. So together, we're going to have a bit of a fireside chat, talking about both anecdotally and scientifically about the differences and also, I think, more the similarities between us. Yes. Ready? Yeah. Okay, so help us understand why Ancestry is here today and your commitment to building deeper connections with the Hispanic community.
So Ancestry is here to really support a lot of the conversations that I've been hearing all during this morning. I've been hearing stories about people finding their roots in order to empower them on their journeys. Just really trying to, people talking about how knowing who they are has given them strength in terms of the work that they're doing now. And that's really Ancestry's mission, to really empower journeys of everyone's individual self-discovery. We have a family history business. We also have an Ancestry DNA product, and we recently launched a health product with really the goal of connecting people to their roots and helping them really understand, who their family is in order to really inspire everyone's future. And so, Terry, you recently told me a story about a project that you did at Univision, really talking about these journeys. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So to talk about why we did the project, and which I'll get into in a second, I think you have to understand, the context of what inspired the project. I'm from Miami originally, and 6 years ago I moved to Chicago. And when you grow up as a Cuban American in Miami, you fill out white on all your paperwork. And so lo and behold, I moved to Chicago, and I found out at 35 years old that I was considered brown. And I assure you that I don't change colors mid-flight between Miami and Chicago. I promise that. But it really opened up my own eyes about some of these unconscious biases that exist. And then speaking to a woman who was a big activist as an African American, I'm sitting next to her and I'm saying, "You're whiter than my grandmother." And I'm thinking these packages that we come in sort of create these rules and these ceilings, like Oscar just said, and our life's experiences, the way we treat other people, the way we see ourselves, changes because of that. So I went back to the newsroom and I said to them, I really want to back this up with some science, because on the outside, we are one color sometimes, and we've got all these other factions, right? And we draw these conclusions, and we see ourselves or treat others based on that. And I'm not sure that the inside matches that. So 4 of my reporters, one of my anchors and a producer, which I think are watching on the live stream because, we're all collective. So hi, everybody in Chicago. They took the test, and it was really interesting because, for example, I had my Venezuelan anchor who swore she was going to have more African descent, ended up having more indigenous. And she was a woman that was a little bit more curvaceous. And she was like, I swore I was going to have more African. And then I had another reporter who looked a little bit more Asian and was blown away by her own results. But I think because it didn't have, I think, any Asian in it. And what I think it really shed light on is that just like the bubbles we just saw, it's sort of like they can be popped, these biases that exist that divide us. And that was really the conversation we wanted to drive and back it up with scientific evidence to show that it's all a little bit subjective, and we're wasting a little bit of our time worrying about those differences. So with that said, the topic of identity within the Hispanic community is critical at this juncture. How can your DNA testing help build more understanding and connections with the community of leaders?
Yeah, and I think I really appreciate that story in terms of what you're finding out as taking the DNA test, because I think what the DNA test does, what I think as scientists we just assume everyone knows this, but what is really true is that all humans, because we're human, we're 99.5% the same at the DNA level. And I think one of the things that the test does is really look at the small areas of difference in order to figure out, how does those patterns in those small areas, how do they compare to what we understand about different global populations? And I think that's really one of the big take-home messages about the DNA test is that, your DNA, my DNA is 99.5% the same as Terry's DNA. And the message about these labels we put on ourselves, there are really a lot of other factors that go into those labels, but on a scientific basis, that's what really makes us all human, and that's what's really important.
So there were 31 of you who are in attendance today who completed the DNA test to learn more about you and your heritage and your family history. And we have some discoveries, right, to share with them. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah. So this is the summary of the results from the 31 individuals whose tests were ready at the time we had to make this graphic. And so, what this really shows is the areas of the world that are in reds and yellows, that's where a lot of people got results from that part of the world, and the cooler colors are where fewer numbers of test takers have results in there. And so what I had hoped for is that in a room of this size, we typically find 1 to 2 pairs of third cousins or closer, but almost everyone in the room would have needed to take the test for us to have to find that pair, and that's always fun to identify who the relatives are in the room. But that really goes to show that it's a large number of people. But in this large number of people, we find family members. And what I want to also emphasize is that these results are really the beginning of everybody's journey. It's not a label we put on ourselves. As you take a DNA test, as you get your results, this really should be the beginning of your journey of trying to understand what that means for you. And that ancestry, in terms of our commitment to the Hispanic community, we're getting more and more detail in the regions of the world over time. We have some big results we're going to release in 2020, and so for all of you who are current Ancestry customers, thank you. Check back in 2020 for more detail. But like I said, it's really the beginning of a journey, and so we also have records. We have over 500 million records in Puerto Rico, Mexico, Central and South America that we're adding to over time as well. And it's really about the process and not the end result.
Absolutely. Do you have some words for us? You've been sitting in a room and hearing everybody talk. Both as a scientist, do you have any closing words for us?
I think really the take-home message is, we are way more alike than different. 99.5% of our DNA is really the same from anybody you meet on the streets, and it's that commonality that we have to remember. So after looking at the results, so what?
I think the mission for Ancestry is wonderful. I think the past gives us purpose, but I think the future, if we want to, is really about unity and the message that Claudia has here. I often say, let's not let our ego get in front of our intelligence, or let's not let these differences get in front of our intelligence so we can move forward as a community. I think I was blown away by the fact that 99.5% of us are all exactly the same, and so we're fighting or whatever about 0.5%. That's it. So we're going to be taking a short break now, and we will be back at 4. Okay? Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. If you can start making your way back to your seats, we're going to get started for the last part of the programming.
Can we get your attention, please? Test.
Hello? 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 Can it be louder? It's as loud as it goes, I guess.
Can I get your attention, please? Is that better? Can you all please take your seats? We're getting ready to start. Asientos, por favor. How's that?
Andrés, ayúdame a callar a la gente.
Por favor, tomen sus asientos. Por favor, tomen sus asientos. 1.
Yeah.
2. 3. Gracias.
Okay. I hope everybody is excited with everything we've learned today, everything we've seen today. I'm very excited about the Hispanic Star. So something that I want to remind you, tomorrow we're going to have an activity regarding the Hispanic Star. So I hope you can join us for that activity. And if you're not here tomorrow for that activity, you can email Michelle at weareallhuman.org for all the information. So remember that. Now, looking back, we're about to start the last part of the day. But before we finish the segments of the day, if there's a takeaway that I would like to share with you and something that I want you to take with you from today is this. We have a unique opportunity in front of us. History tells us that regardless of the century or the country we look at, there's a universal truth. From the suffragettes to the civil rights movement, and more recently, the LGBT quest for equality, every single transcendental change started in the same way, with a group of people that got together to push an idea whose time had come. We can be that group of people for the Hispanic community. We can be that group of people for the community. The first step we need is to change the narrative and to confront stereotypes. Because if you think about it, what is a stereotype? A stereotype is nothing but an idea, an opinion of somebody else about me or someone like me. And it's an opinion, that's it, not a fact. But if we mistakenly assume that this idea is a fact, if we believe the low expectations somebody else has from us, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's what we have to avoid. So the tools that we have to change the narrative, the best tools is our own story. The best tools that we have to fight stereotypes is our rich, multi-dimensional experiences. And that's the tools that we have to fight stereotypes. And before I leave, I want to ask you to do all of this together. Because as Claudia said, the only way to win is if we all win. And there's a traditional ancient proverb that I really like and I want to share with you before we leave that says that no tree has branches so foolish as to fight with each other. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I have to bring it down to the Latina height. Sorry about that. I am Lisette Arzuaga, and I am one of the co-founders of AIM, the Alliance for Inclusive and Multicultural Marketing, which I founded 3 years ago in partnership with Gilbert Davila and Carlos Santiago, and partnership with the ANA, the Association for National Advertisers, which partnered with us and supported us throughout the way. Next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what we've learned in the last few years since we founded AIM is that, unfortunately, marketing hasn't moved as fast as the world around us has. The evolution of the world has been much quicker, and as marketers, we've embraced those changes, but we haven't been, I love that slide. We haven't been proactive. We haven't been visionaries. We haven't been change agents. We've actually reacted to what's happening as opposed to seeing what's going to happen and affecting change as visionaries for a movement. We have seen some companies that have led by example and have expanded their vision of diversity to include people with disabilities, plus-size models, Muslims, on top of African Americans, Asian, Hispanics, LGBTQ, and so on. So there are companies that indeed have led by example, but unfortunately, this has been the exception and not the rule. In fact, about out of the entire marketing ecosystem, 50% of marketers today spend less than 1% of their dollars targeting multicultural segments. That means Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, and LGBTQ. They make up nearly half the population, and yet marketers are spending less than 1% of their dollars. The other 50% that are investing more than that 1% are actually not investing in line with the population size or the opportunity, even though they know that if they were to do so, the company's growth would be exponentially faster. Many times they just don't know where to start or how to do it. So here are 4 of the reasons why they indeed have said that they can't, they haven't advertised. 23% claim they don't have sufficient dollars. 15% don't have the bandwidth. 14% claim that universal truths are the same for everyone, so there's really no need to do anything specific. And 13% believe that their general market efforts, or by that they mean efforts targeting white non-Hispanic targets, are actually reaching all of their demographics. So what we did at AIM is that we created a new algorithm called SIM, Cultural Insights Impact Measure, in partnership with NBCU, and I want to give a shout out to Ana Chepi, who's here with me today. What this Cultural Insights Impact Measure has done is measure the impact of cultural insights in advertising and programming. We took a look at 11,000 responders in the Hispanic, African American, Asian, LGBTQ, and people with disabilities, representing all of those segments. And they took a look at 162 ads that were submitted by 79 brands. We actually had a submission of nearly 400 ads that marketers wanted to see their ads represented. So And we looked at 60 top-rated television shows. And we evaluated the impact of cultural insights in these ads and programming. And what we learned is that that culture, oh my gosh, what a surprise, culture matters. That people want to see themselves represented, that people want to see themselves respected, that people want to see themselves seen in positive light, not stereotyped on television. In fact, Hispanics were one of the groups that were most strongly aligned to these concepts, especially when messaging was in not only with culture, but with language as well. So when hitting both pillars, it was very, very clear that that was very important. What we learned is that culture drives growth in corporate America today. It enhances brand perception twice as much, increases ad effectiveness 2 to 3 times as much, and lifts purchase intents 2 to 7 times as much. So with this, we created See All, an effort to see everyone. Everyone wants to be included, everyone to be seen. And to inspire this movement, we have a video that I'm going to leave you here with, narrated by some of our board of directors. And I hope it inspires you to see all in all of your efforts moving forward.
Step up and take a bold stand, even if it means you take some heat. The work you do affects popular culture. Your brands touch people every day. If you choose to do so, you can do a lot of good. See all.
Our opportunity as a marketing community, it's to drive growth. Simply put, that is our job. And we can't drive growth without including every consumer in the marketplace.
See all.
See all.
Multicultural has yet to be unleashed. There's so much out there to tap into. It's the right thing for our country, it's the right thing for our businesses, it's the right thing for the marketing community, and for all the right reasons.
See all.
See all.
See all.
If not us, then who? If not now, then when?
I will commit to creating the environment that will unleash all the power that exists in this room and in our industry.
Let's just challenge ourselves to drive growth in our businesses, in our clients' businesses, and while we're driving that growth, let's also bring America with us.
See all. See all.
See all.
See all.
See all.
We need everyone to feel included and valued. It's time. It's time. It's time. It's time.
Thank you. We're going to chat here a little bit about the opportunity and about the marketplace. I'm going to start with Philip. Philip, today the population of Hispanics in the States is equivalent to the population of Italy with nearly 60 million persons. It's comparable to the purchasing power of Canada at $1.7 trillion. Yet there are preconceived notions about the group that stand in the way of marketers realizing this full potential. When we were chatting this week on the phone, you mentioned that you recently visited Miami and that this opened your eyes to the spending power and creative excellence of the Hispanic community and some of the agencies there. What obstacles do you think stand in marketers' path to unlock this potential, and what do you think we can do about it?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's funny because I did that DNA test myself about 2 months ago, and I am 100% British. So I'm probably the least Latino human being that you've actually ever met. But thanks for being. It's lovely to be here anyway. So thank you for that.
That means you're not my cousin, then.
Yeah, we're definitely not cousins. But it's great to be here. And so I don't pretend to know anything like you guys know, but I do know about some of the data and certainly about some of the experiences that we've had. So I run a festival in Cannes in France. It's a festival of creativity and marketing. And really what we do is we highlight the best work in the world, the most creative work in the world. And the reason that we do that is because we know that the most creative work in the world is the most effective work. And so for 65 years, we've been highlighting the greatest advertising in the world. And if you look at some of the data from the Hispanic market, you can see that it's massively underrepresented at our festival. So, for instance, the number of entries into our competition each year from the US, only 2% of that is from the Hispanic market. It actually represents Hispanic people. And what we do know is when we look at the great work that wins awards at our festival and really works, to your point earlier on, it's very, very clear that the more specific and the more culturally relevant the work is, the more successful it is. The bland work is actually the least successful work. So I think what the Hispanic agencies are telling us is that they're struggling with something that really began with the financial crisis. During the financial crisis, a lot of marketing organizations pulled back their investment on specific Hispanic work. And they pulled it way back to about roughly 50-50. So about half the marketers in the US have a total market strategy, which is they market to their entire market, and about 50% have a culturally defined strategy. And now that has moved over recent time, I think, certainly moving in the right direction. And if you look at the more successful brands, you can see that they are looking at it through this lens. So if you take Pepsi, for instance, Pepsi, about 6 years ago, they looked at their market share and they realized that they were losing market share. And they assumed lots of different reasons for this, but they actually found out that one of the main reasons was that they were having a total market approach. And they shifted to a specific Hispanic approach, and their market share did increase. So what we do is we highlight marketing that tells stories. You can only tell stories if you understand human beings. You can only really understand human beings if you understand their culture. So I think we would like to see more work from the Hispanic community. We'd like to see more marketers using the power of culture in storytelling, because we know from the data we have that it works.
So I have a follow-up question on that as far as agencies that are concerned. And, sometimes you wonder what the disconnect is, is why aren't they submitting? And, so do you think it's a lack of belief that they can compete with the larger agencies? Do you think it's because they don't necessarily have the ability to compete because their jobs have been, or the contracts have been minimized, a combination of a lot of things? Or do you think that potentially Cannes could reach out to some of those agencies and encourage them to submit because they don't feel that they've been invited to the party, for lack of a better word?
I mean, that's a possibility. I personally think it probably starts with the marketers, actually, because if you think about it, if the marketers believe that storytelling based in culture will succeed, then they will work with agencies who can tell those stories in a creative way, and they'll allow those agencies the freedom to create that work. And what we see time and time again is when marketing and business people allow creative people to produce work that comes from something they really understand, the results are really phenomenal. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you don't allow Hispanic agencies to do genuine work that really speaks to Hispanic people, you will not get the work that stands out in the end. So I think it's a circle that's self-fulfilling and ultimately very successful.
Thank you. Christy, as we speak about preconceived notions, as we were just chatting a few minutes ago, or even the concept of fake news that's so prevalent today, whether we like it or not, especially when it comes to digital media. What do you believe news outlets should do to ensure the information we receive on an ongoing basis via digital platforms is accurate and balanced? And how can we minimize the stereotyping and maximize the news stories about the incredible work Hispanics are doing today to make this country as great as it is?
Well, I run CBSN, which is a global live 24/7 streaming news service, and we're available on more than 20 devices, services, and platforms. So if while you were here today you wanted to watch the impeachment hearings taking place, you could just watch them on your phone, and which I did not do. I was paying attention, but I can catch up later. So, and what's important about that is that among our audience, 42% of the Hispanics who make up our CBS Interactive streaming audience are what they call cord cutters and cord nevers, meaning they don't subscribe to cable, meaning they can't access CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, all of which require a cable subscription or a satellite subscription. And they're looking for news. And we are providing fact-based news. Let's start with that. So to counter fake news, you really have to focus on facts. And our brand, CBS News, is known for that. And our new innovative service, CBSN, is also known for that. Second of all, our staff needs to reflect the changing audience out there. So behind the camera and in front of the camera, we have made a very conscious effort to have our team reflect the diversity of the audience that we are serving. And our audience is 20 to 30 years younger than the broadcast and cable audience. So our median age is 37. We're more urban, we're more diverse, and we're younger, obviously. So having people with diverse perspectives leads to the breaking of stereotypes, in that they're able to call BS on stereotypes when we might be perpetuating them for one reason or another. So it starts with who we hire, what we put on camera, whether that's our staff or the people that we book, and then the stories that we tell. So we started a short form documentary series a few years ago, and of the 50 that we've done, roughly 10 have been on topics that relate to the Hispanic marketplace. We started in 2016 with a documentary in May of that year of Latinos who were planning to vote for Trump, which at the time people thought it wasn't a real story, but it turned out 30% voted for Trump. And I think that reflecting the diversity within the Hispanic community is also something that we have strived for.
Thank you. Catherine, in order to embed cultural cues in marketing strategies, advertising, and programming, companies have to have executives who know this market well enough to know what the right cultural cues are. A little bit about what Philip was saying a few minutes ago. Yet the representation of Hispanics in front and behind the camera is not what it should be. It's not what it should be in corporate corridors or general market advertising agencies either, which, as we mentioned, are getting much of the business, and yet they don't have the people or the infrastructure to provide those cultural insights that are so important. Catherine, what are your thoughts on the challenges behind the lack of representation? What can we do to address it? And how can we lead by example in our own capacity to ensure that Hispanics are not only invited, but they actually have a seat at the table?
The seat at the table question. First of all, I think Christy did a great job of talking about how we can get behind and in front of the cameras. Philip did a great job of addressing cultural competency and the need for that. I have a theory about getting a seat at the table. And if you'll indulge me, I'll share it with you. If you walk into a room and there's a table and you don't have a seat, walk out of that room, find the nearest folding chair, put it under your arm, march back in that room, take your seat at the table, scooch people out of the way if you need to. Everyone will be uncomfortable, but everyone will grow and learn from your courage. I have to be honest, Aflac, 75% of our business is in Japan. Did you guys know that? No one does. I don't speak Japanese. I don't blend when I go to Japan. I'm a couple of feet taller than the nearest anybody. It was funny, a colleague of mine, we were meeting after work to go to a dinner. And I said, "How will you recognize me in the crowd?" He said, "You kind of stand out." I would never go into Japan with a full American strategy. We have a fiduciary responsibility as corporate officers to get this right. And if that means hiring a consultant, great. If that means hiring a staff, fine. But we owe it to all our stakeholders to do whatever it takes to not misstep. And I see this exactly the same way, with the exact same responsibility.
So I'd love to follow up with that. To hear your thoughts as well, all of you. We talk about grabbing the seat, which I think is brilliant, and ideally we'd love to do it. I think one of the problems in the marketing and advertising industry, and I know that the ANA has done a little bit of study about, the fact that Hispanics don't feel that this is an industry that has invited them to participate, to be a part of it from the get-go. So even the talent at the entry level is not comparable to the population size. So what can we do from our end to inspire folks? And I think sometimes it's also the idealism of our community, and maybe that's a wonderful thing, that folks want to do something that is so important that's going to affect this world in such a positive light. They don't see marketing and advertising as that path for them. But yet, in marketing and advertising, there's so many amazing campaigns today that you can actually, you can affect change and you can inspire people to do better. How can we inspire folks who are in college or some of the young folks here today to say to them, you know what, this is indeed the right industry for you, and if you want to affect change, come join us and grow with us?
Well, I'll just really quickly tell you that we launched a new line at Cannes a few years ago called the Glass Line, the Line for Change. It's a line about gender and positive portrayals of gender. And that idea came from Sheryl Sandberg, who said to me once that marketing, it dwarfs any other job you can do. So marketing affects culture and reflects culture and shapes culture in a way that the movies and other media can only dream of because of how it's so wealthy. People are spending so much money on it, and it is so pervasive that really the young people who enter the industry that I see, they understand that, and they can see how they can shape culture if they have the right attitude. And what's really interesting is, if you get it right, it can be exponentially powerful. If you tell the stories right in the right creative and cultural context, it can just really, really shift the dial, as we've seen on numerous occasions.
Thank you.
Coming at it from a journalism perspective, I would say sunlight is the thing that creates change. So tracking metrics and statistics, holding companies accountable for what they say they're going to do, I think is one way we can really create real change in terms of bringing people into the business. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion, but until the numbers are there to back it up, people won't believe it. And I think, you asked earlier about fake news. We have to counter platitudes with facts and statistics, and that's really what we have to rely on. They all have to be provable, and facts have to be even more demonstrably provable now than they were even a few years ago, because so many people are very comfortable lying.
Not on this one.
As Philip just noted, not on this panel. We're being totally honest. For
or
me,
in this room, let me just say, I want to be able to get out. But I think what I'm trying to say is, I think even if a company's statistics are bad, we have to get it out there. And I am coming from a company that went through a very public Me Too episode in the past 2 years. We at CBS News Digital were reporting on our own company, and so I think that kind of transparency and sunlight has been important for our company in getting to move forward. But I think all companies need to be held accountable and to be transparent.
And while we're talking about accountability, I'd like to pull that thread a bit on diversity and inclusion. If you don't have equity, you don't have integrity. If you're not paying all of your people the same dollar amount for the same work, you should be ashamed to call yourself an inclusive culture.
Thank you. Philip, you mentioned a little bit about total market a few minutes ago, and indeed how many companies have gone from efforts targeting different groups directly to having a total market approach in which they believe that they can reach everyone at the same time with the same message. For the most part, though, this approach has been too general and hasn't worked, and corporate growth has been minimized because of it, or partly maybe because of it. How would you convince key brands that it's time to adopt a more targeted approach? Again, we just saw the SIM score and how culture does matter, and connecting with audiences does matter. And then every audience is different. They all want to be seen and reflected. They want to be respected. They don't want to be talked to like everybody else. How can we convince marketers that investing that it just doesn't? I know that they want to maximize dollars by hitting everybody, but that the thought process is also, if you get it right, your ROI is going to increase.
Yeah. So if you look at the Kantar research into Hispanics, just so I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really, really interesting, and it tells you what Hispanic people generally index above in terms of what they want, how they want to be communicated with. And the key things are they're more interested in shared experiences, they're more interested in aspiration, and they're more interested in storytelling and culture and family than the average American. So to answer your question, though, there is a direct correlation between the winners at our festival and market share and sales. There's a direct correlation. Now, if you take the chances of winning one of our awards, and you take the Hispanic agencies who've entered the Lions in the last 5 years, they have hit a percentage chance of winning an 8% chance, right? So for every 100 pieces of work they've put in, they've won 8 Lions. Now that might not sound very much, but the average is 3%. So they're way, way, way above the average. And I just know this for a fact. Well, I kind of feel it. It's not a fact. I know in my heart the reason they win Lions so successfully is because they understand that difference in culture and they tell those stories. That is why they are so successful. So I think you've got to use a data-led approach with any board that wants to understand why you should invest in this route. And the line of data is just so clear, that the breadcrumb trail is just so incredibly clear. You can see it in the data that we have anyway.
That's great. We have an AIM member at one of our first meetings. The AIM member made a direct comparison between total market and going and losing that specificity from going to a specialized person and then moving on to an HMO where you can only see a general practitioner, and then So the direct comparison is: do you want to go to the best of the best when you want to reach a segment, or do you want to go to somebody who knows a little bit of everything? And that was a very interesting comparison, I thought. Thankfully, there are a lot of general market agencies that have actually built their capacities or partnered with specialized agencies. But what is your thought as far as that whole concept of going to someone who knows a little bit of everything as opposed to somebody who might know a target really, really well, and by default, I mean, as a Hispanic woman, I know the market, but I live in the United States. I also have to know the United States. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'll take a shot at that. You need to let the data drive your strategy. The last company I worked for had 60,000 employees in Guadalajara, Mexico. And I was so proud of myself because I went down there to give a speech, and I practiced and I rehearsed and I worked so very, very hard to give the entire speech in Spanish. And the plant manager came up to me afterwards and said, "That was great. Don't ever do that again." And I thought, did I say something naughty in Spanish and not know what I was saying? He goes, "No, Catherine, you speak Spanish like a gringo." You know, we've got to let the data drive the strategy, the data and how people are consuming their information. The way people consume media is so fragmented today. I saw a recent study where I want to say 80% of Hispanic males between the ages of 18 and 26 get all of their television news from their phone. It's not just about serving them up the content that we think will resonate with them. It's about meeting them where, when, and how they want to be met. And that's the other side of letting the data drive the strategy, understanding what that is as well.
So, Christy, I have a question as far as that's concerned. That's an interesting point. When you think about content and who you're directing your content to online, understanding that the Hispanic population it's a young population by default. If you're going to target a younger population, you're indeed going to target Hispanics online. How do you consider relaying the news and information so that you can make sure that it appeals to this audience, so that they actually tune into what we're telling them as opposed to another platform?
That's a really great question. I think we have seen some news outlets take a point of view that young people want to hear the news from other young people, and said, well, all of our anchors and correspondents will be under 30 so that we can reach a younger market. We have not found that to be true. So our reporters and anchors and correspondents are. We don't hire a certain age person to speak to younger people. But what we do is we do format in a different way. We're a little bit looser. We're a little bit less, I would say, stiff maybe than some traditional formats would be. But really what speaks to the younger audience are facts. And I'll just go back to that again. They're interested in facts, they're interested in knowledge, and they're interested in going in depth on topics. So where that is not being addressed well is in cable right now, which has become very opinion focused in the way it's presenting news, and often they're just skimming the surface on topics. So we invested, as I said, in a series of documentaries where we'll go really in depth on topics that we know are important to the audience. Climate is important, privacy, technology. Recently, we did a series on what we would call it's called Speaking Frankly. It's topics people aren't comfortable talking about. So we talked about porn addiction. We talked about dating apps. We talked about what they call consensual non-monogamy, which was very new to me, and you can find it on our website. You'll learn a lot, and then also Title IX in terms of how it's impacted sexual harassment cases on college campuses. So these are all topics that, in one sense, young people might be interested in, but frankly, their parents are interested as well. So it's really, we do research on the audience and what they're interested in, and then we serve them, but we also don't talk down to them, and we don't pander to them by like hiring 24-year-olds when there's a 75-year-old correspondent who knows a topic inside and out.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. So we leave you with one word. What's the one word you want people to remember when they walk out of here?
Consensual non-monogamy. That's a phrase.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for that panel. Thank you. Look, I mean, I obviously, Christy, Phil, Lisette, and Catherine, I don't want to put you on the spot, of course, but I would love to have a commitment from media, from brands, and from festivals to actually increase the amount of dollars that we have invested in Hispanics. I want to increase the number of people that we have inside companies. We have to increase not only the D&I, the diversity and inclusion representation behind the cameras, but on front of the cameras. But it's amazing to have so many allies. And it is important that we talk to channels, to brands, to marketers, to platforms, to media. We want to see more lions won, not only by Hispanics, but about Hispanics. And I hope that with the Hispanic Star, we can, insert so many other people that want to get into festivals like that. I just didn't see enough excitement in one of the panels before where we were talking about data. So I want to make sure that we land that message. We are going to create the top 100 things that you need to know about Hispanics. Nielsen, Pew, Cien Plus, and Guerrero Media, among many other, not many other, those are the research institutes that are donating their best data so that we can have everything we wanted to know about Hispanics together. Because we need data. Because we have heard again and again that we have to build our cases, that we have to empower ourselves. So I want you to be excited about that idea that we not only have a framework like the Hispanic Star, but also we're going to have a source of data called the top 100 things that you need to know about Hispanics. So let's give it a round of applause for the data that Nielsen and others are doing that. So before we continue, I wanted to touch base with everyone and vote and get a sense of vote like we did this morning in this morning session. I know that I skipped that. If we can go to the voting session. Sorry about that. So get your mobile phones ready. We want to have one voting session. Ricardo, let's get that there. Thank you. So the question I have for all of you is one that is like direct feedback to us. Do you believe that it's more valuable to gather the Hispanic Leadership Summit and allies in next year, before or after the 2020 election? If we would be coming here next year, and probably we'll move to the bigger room, to the General Assembly, because we're probably going to be more. But if we would do that, would you do it before or after the election? Say? Oh, okay, I got it. Oh, wow, this is the first time that we got so much consensus. Actually, not the first time. Okay, we got it. Thank you so much. That's very insightful. That's very insightful. So thank you so much. Let's now welcome the next panel here to talk. Huh? Oh, sorry about that. There you go. Damian Rivera from Alpha.
How you guys doing so far? Are we enjoying today so far? You can't hear it? It's on. All right, you guys, how are we doing so far today? Enjoying it? All right, that was halfway okay. We are at the Hispanic Leadership Summit. We are Latinos that are making things happen here in the best place to make it happen in the world. I want to hear us loud. When we speak our voice, when our voices are heard, we lend credence to all of those that came before us. Every single person that put energy into you to put you in this room so that you can make a difference when you leave this room. There you go. And when I think about people who have made a difference in leadership and getting us to those levels, I think of this panel right here. So let's give a big round of applause, real loud, for our panel. We got Esther Aguirre, Michelle Saleh, Evelyn Morales, Nina Vaca, Sid Wilson, and Maria Rios. We are going to have a good old time. It's the end of the day, I know, but that doesn't affect our energy because we got some things to do. All right, so I'm going to make a transition up over here. We're going to start with our first question. 3 questions that are pre-planned, right? And then we want to see if there's any questions from you guys. All right? Here we go. We got to remember. When you speak, please press the button. So, first question for Sid and Esther. All right, there is a bit of a leadership gap. Both of your organizations recently released studies that speak to the issue. ACER's 2019 Corporate Inclusion Index and LCDA's State of Latino Representation on Fortune 1000 corporate boards. Great. If you haven't read them, please do. To help set the stage for the rest of our discussion, and from a high level, what are the 2 to 3 key takeaways from your research that you found to be the most telling about that leadership gap, and what improvements are you seeing being made?
Sure. Well. Let me start. First, we say, "Buenas tardes, mi gente." All right. And thank Damien, oh my goodness, for getting us nice and energetic as we wrap up a great Hispanic Leadership Summit. And before we do that, can we just please give a big applause to Claudia? We were here last year. It's grown so much. And for those of us that organize conferences, we know that these things are not easy to put together. And Claudia has just been great, and we've collaborated throughout this year. We went to Davos together, which is how the Hispanic Promise got started, and then and we're going back to Davos again this January. We're going to Cannes in June, so we're doing a lot. So because part of the goal is to answer your question is that sometimes you got to think globally to empower yourselves locally. And when you have an economy a size of ours, the 8th largest economy, for Latinas, the 11th largest economy in the world, we have to flex that. And I say that because when you think about these important statistics, what is key, what is missing, which is one of the things that we found, of course, within our I said corporate inclusion index. Number one, there is not enough intentionality. There's not enough intentionality in saying that I am going to cultivate the next Latina chief executive officer at our corporation. What you will find is that many CEOs who rose up, somebody says, you are my succession plan. We need to be intentional of saying that Latinos must be part of the corporate succession plan, whether it's to the C-suite or to the board of directors. Secondly, is to understand that, show me your resume and I'll show you a job. Show me your credibility in terms of your network, and I'll show you a board seat. We need to talk about what it is that we need to do to make sure that not only do we have the tools, but that corporate America recognizes that it can't just be the old-fashioned plan of going to the person next to you and saying, who do you know to be the next CEO? Who do you know could be the board director? That there must be intentionality. And then lastly is that while it's important with employment and important with governance, many of us know that procurement doesn't get the attention that it should. And this empowers our Hispanic businesses. And so we need to make sure that corporate America is doing more to give those opportunities for corporate America. Because when you hear 3% Latinos on boards, less than 1% Latinas on boards, and you look at these statistics, you're saying that there's got to be a disconnect. And so we need to do more. So whoops, save me. All right, saved by Damien. All right, Damien.
Bringing down the house.
Our hero. So yes, now that what goes. So that's there, and I'm going to pass it over to my dear friend Esther Yolanda, CEO of LCDA, Latino Corporate Directors Association.
Thank you. Thanks, Sid. And right on. Well, a couple of things. One thing that you may or may not be aware of is that there is, for the first time, a movement pushed by shareholders and institutional investors to diversify the boardrooms. This has never happened before, and it is because the shareholders are using their proxy and voting leverage. So what does that mean for us? One is for Latino Corporate Directors Association, we are working on the supply side. I think there is a myth that we are looking to dispel. While the numbers are low, we were formed to do something about it and coalesce with as many people and all of you to do something about it. So first, we do have a strong supply and of both experienced directors and focused on preparing the next wave. They're already board qualified. It's about positioning people for the boardroom and, again, taking away the excuse they cannot find Latinos on the board. The second area is data, facts, and knowledge. Right now, companies are not required to disclose the gender, race, ethnicity of their boards. And so we started pulling together, along with Victor Arias and some other partners, Latinos on Fortune 1000 company boards. Eventually, we want to track Latinos in all 3,000 Russell 3000 index company boards, because if the data is not out there it doesn't get tracked, doesn't get measured. And so, but we need to not rely on others to do this. So we have not only released some of that data, but I'm pleased to announce here, and with Claudia's event and when we are all human, that we're going to release a tracker so that you can go to our website and find out of any of these companies on the Fortune 1000, instantly find out how many Latinos do they have on their board. Is it 1? From 0, 1, or 2, because we can't keep that data to ourselves. It's about everyone here having that data. So if you're visiting our company or they're visiting you, or our leaders and legislators are getting calls to support their company efforts, they can instantly have the data at their fingertips to really make a difference. So that is this, even though there is a wave and a push to diversify boards, we're not part of that wave unless we're actively engaged with all the key stakeholders that are making it happen. So, but it takes all of us working together, which is why I love Claudia's push, again, for unity and leveraging all of our strengths to make a difference. So I look forward to getting that information into your hands, and likewise hearing from you on how we can support you.
Outstanding. So when we think about leadership, a lot of times we talk about the corporate area, but there's also the educational component where when you are a student sitting in there, to see a professor that looks like you, or to see someone else that's able to point you in a direction to say, yes, go for that C-suite, doesn't often happen. So Evelyn, you are in the educational area. Curious your thoughts on, this whole dynamic that's happening from an education standpoint. How do we create more opportunities or get more within the school systems? How can business leaders partner with higher education to ensure Latinx college grads have the requisite skills needed for those professional successes as they are progressing in their lives and their careers?
Well, good afternoon. I'm so thankful to be here. This is a very, very important question, because as we talk a lot about corporate, we talk about, the industry, but we forget that everything starts really at the education level and at the college level, and even before that, actually. So in order to build the skills for the next generation of leaders, we need to look at what's happening at the college level, whether it's private, public. We need to find out, we need to create partnerships between the industry and allow the industry to also drive issues to the colleges, in order for the colleges to know what's happening, what they're missing in terms of the Hispanic community. So the university is actually the place where we learn, where we nurture students and the young professionals. That's where they learn how to become leaders. So there are a couple of 3 kind of actions or concerns of actions that I've seen that I believe that we need to take in consideration. One is, as a leader, as a vice president, actually, of the university, I realized that I need to be mindful of representing the Hispanic, and that I need to embrace that culture, because the younger students want to see me. They want to see them in myself. So this is important, because if I don't do that, then I'm missing the opportunity. I'm missing an opportunity and I'm denying, basically, my background and theirs. So the second part is that institutions or corporations, we need to be mindful to execute cultural intelligence through the organization, top down to the top. So we need to start putting programs within the organization that promotes that more diversity. So, but the second part, which I think is very important, and in order to support faculty and mid-level managers, is also the personal responsibility that we have. we have the personal responsibility, and this goes to students at the university level, to educate themselves. There is no reason why not to get the data or the information you want, because now social media is everywhere. You have the information in your fingertips. You can educate yourself to that level, to whatever level you need to. And so, creating exponential opportunities for to get more educated, and formal education is important, and it's something that is a personal responsibility too. The third part that I want to talk about is about how to advance the career progress, right, between mid-level managers, supervisors, and all that. And we have to look at this problem holistically. So we need to be able to advance programs, internships at the college level, that paid internship actually, because that's going to help many of the underrepresented Hispanics that, have issues, and I've dealt with many of them, several of them at my university. So we need to create more of these summits, so that Hispanics can participate and learn more of what's happening. Obviously, we need to partner with the industry, and corporations have the ability to go to the university level and also demand for changes. I mean, you can. I mean, an industry can do that and say, listen, there is a need for this, and demand that. So that's important. So I think also what I was going to say is that college is in the university is where we nurture the students, and that's where they learn all the skills to be leaders in the future, in a way where they can still maintain their ethnicity, the background, safely still. This is why the reason why I went from government and corporate, I moved from that area of work to actually academia and education, because I want to be transformative, and I wanted to inspire the next generation, and I wanted to be able to be part of that. And also knowing what I know from the corporate, I'm able now to be more aimful and going to the areas that the Hispanic needs most, and students at large, because I represent, everybody. So I think these are, 3 points that I think we can do, and that's how we can change probably in the education side.
Thank you very much for that, Evelyn. Yep, yeah, I see people that want to clap. Absolutely. If you feel like you want to clap it up. All right, next question. And then we're going to turn it over to you guys to ask a few questions also. I have some more after this next one, but I'd love to hear some questions from you guys out there. So for Nina, Michelle, and Maria, for three of you, for each of you. All right, so as Latinx business leaders, we've heard just now about students and what we need to do there from a progression standpoint. We've heard about professionals and the corporate area. How do we hold ourselves accountable for contributing to the career progression of our current Latinx employees and the development of our future Latinx leaders?
So I can take a shot at that one. Before I begin, I just want to say how grateful I am to be here as well. I've dedicated the last 23 years of my life to not just building a company, but building communities. I know many of you out there, you're my brothers and sisters, and very seldomly do I see us all united under one roof with one mission, aligning to move forward. And it's been said before, but I have to tell you, I am so proud of our leader, Claudia Edelman. I really am. It's been said before, and it should be said 1,000 times. Claudia understands that as Latinos, we're seen as Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Ecuadorians, Colombians. This is how the community is seen, but this is how we can be seen when we work together. So for me, my actions have really come from a place of gratitude as an immigrant, starting my business from my living room floor and having a sustained success. For me, it's about being responsible and leading the way. If we advocate for corporations to hire more Latinos and we're not hiring more Latinos, then what are we doing? If we advocate for diversity and we don't have diversity, then what are we doing? So for me at Pinnacle, it's been about leading by example. Today, 66% of our corporate headquarters are women. They're not all Latinas, but they're women. 48% are minorities, representing 13 different countries. We can't be for Hispanics, about Hispanics, only for Hispanics. We have to be about America. So I spent a lot of time in my early years sponsoring and mentoring, and by the way, those are great tools. Please continue to do so. But then I started thinking what we really need is sustainable programs that create a huge impact. Sid had it right when he said you can think globally, but you have to act locally. And I want to tell you about what we're doing locally because I think it's going to change the face of Dallas, and it's going to change the face of Texas, and I want to challenge you as a leader in our community to espouse this in your own state, in your own city. And that is, as you know, Dallas has been one of the fastest growing business cities in the country, a lot of corporate headquarters, it's no secret, they're moving to Dallas. We have a workforce issue. I can count hundreds of corporations that now in the financial services sector, in the transportation sector, have large groups of people, so there's a workforce issue. At the same time, we thought, how could we create a program that will help our community? The P-TECH program and the Collegiate Academy is what I'm going to talk about. If you haven't heard of this, it's a trifecta. It's a partnership. It started in 2016 between 3 entities. Number 1, the Community College District. Number 2, 12 DISD schools. And number 3, industry. And I'm proud that Pinnacle was the first and only first adopters, the only entrepreneur in the bunch. There we were, hand in hand. Thank you. But this is what I'm talking about when we say leading by example. We're there investing hand in hand with some of the major employers in the city of Dallas. And here's what we designed. A curriculum that will graduate, by the way, most of these are minority students, vastly Latino students, first-generation college hopefuls. They will graduate with an associate's degree and a high school degree at the same time with a technology track. So 2020, you're going to have 2,000 largely Latino students in tech graduating. Something's in the water in Dallas, Texas, but think of the future. Think of how many thousands we're going to graduate per year. That's acting locally, holding ourselves accountable to contributing impactfully. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you. Michelle, what are some of your thoughts?
Okay, I don't know how I top that.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And I
press the button. Press the button. You got to press the button. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I don't know how I'm going to top that, but that was amazing. So I think it starts at the top. When I think about, I started with Dentsu in January, and I remember in January during the World Economic Forum, our CEO sent a few of us a text, and he was so excited. It was a video of Claudia, and he's like, I just signed this, and I'm so excited. We're doing this. And I believe it does start with your leaders at the top, our executive team. We all have individual goals that we hold ourselves accountable to. These are real goals. Like how are we getting around the table? Who are we helping to educate? How are we being part of these programs in our community, on our teams, and in the broader aspect of the areas that we lead? So I think it really does start with the leaders, and it is personal. Business is personal. I think about the Latino community and I get so excited. It's such a bright future. When I think about the skills of the future that we need, the social, emotional skills, the ambition, the growth mindset, our Latino community has that naturally. And we need to, it's an and model. We need to help our Latina community understand the value that they are bringing to our schools, to our organizations, just by who they are. We need to help them be and create an environment where they can be who they are, to stop trying to be someone they're not, to dress a different way, to say things that sound the right way. They are great, and we need to embrace that. We need to change our environments. We need to change our boardrooms. We need to change the way we educate our people. We need to change the way that we look at promotions. We need to change the way we look at individuals' resumes and how we recruit individuals into our companies so that we are truly embracing inclusivity and that all people are feeling not just that they want to stay there because they're getting paid well or because there's an opportunity for promotion, but because they're so excited. They're going home and telling their friends and their family about the companies that they work for, that they're able to contribute their personal experience along with what they've learned in school through an internship or through an apprenticeship. So I am excited about the future. I think it's very bright through programs that we talked about in summits like this, when we need to come together collectively to share our vision and then take pragmatic steps to realize that vision together.
Maria. So the question I'd love for you to piggyback on the same question, which is, how do we hold ourselves accountable? You've built a huge billion-dollar business. How do you help people? What advice do you have for us to hold ourselves accountable to our community?
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's not working?
Yep, it's
What
working.
about now?
Yeah,
Perfect. It's just too far away. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Again, I'm just thrilled and honored to share a stage with this phenomenal group of people here. And it's just amazing. And I want to just echo Nina for what she said. And I cannot thank you enough for what you're doing. It's amazing. Congratulations. And everyone here today as well, thank you for making the time to be here. We need to really be the power together, one voice, and we're strong. So we're all humans. The question is, what are we doing? What am I doing? What I would say is that we, or the Latinos and Latinas, are the full workforce. The GDP back this up. We're the best workforce. And so if nobody is paying attention to what we're doing, then it's not going to be nice. We're going to be leading. And what I'm doing is cross-training my employees, making them ready to go to the next level. Because if I don't do it, the big boys are going to take them away from me. I do waste management. It's a male-dominated industry. I'm the first woman in the waste management industry in America. And breaking the barrier, I need to compete. I need to have employees that are able to deliver. So in order to do that, I want to keep them. I want to promote these people. I want to be able to take them to a different level and contribute. So that's what I'm doing to make our community, anything that has to do with these employees buying homes, paying education for their children. That's what I'm doing, creating those jobs that are not only the jobs of now, but in the waste industry now, what I have done is creating jobs for the future. What are the jobs for the future? I develop an application. I'm working on worker safety to mitigate injuries on the job, hazards on the job, not only on my current clients, but also future clients from all over the world. That's what I'm doing, creating those jobs in technology. So many times it's tough to train or make these employees switch to that change. But if we embrace and they see what we're doing as Latina, as a woman, many times that helps. And that's the push that I'm doing. And when I see them switching and changing, that's, it gives me a great satisfaction. And I just keep moving the needle, because it's so important to scale and to teach and to show that if I can do it, they can do it too.
Fantastic. I love that. Taking action. All right. So speaking of taking action.
Can I say something before
we
end?
Absolutely, Evelyn. Please do.
I wanted to add to what Maria said, because you asked about accountability. And I think we can all do a little bit in our own community. We can do in scale. And for example, right now I brought two of my employees. Can you stand up, please, Patrick and Erica? They're the director of human resource at the university in Patrick. He's a student affairs. And I wanted to point it out that I did that because I want to train them. I want to, give them the the next, the experiential opportunity. And this is one of them. And I wanted to bring more of the students also for here today. And this is what we all can do. And I think we all are doing it. And Nina said that about the program that she's doing. So this is all things that we can do, and individually you all can participate within your own community. It's tangible. It's definitely tangible.
Awesome. So, yep.
One thing real quick, which I think we talk a lot about voting rights, for example. We don't talk about the other voting rights, and that is your shareholder voting rights. As I said, we actually own about shares of about 125 different companies, which gives us a very unique ability to have that kind of a voice. And all of you are shareholders in one way or another. You have a 401k, you have something else, but to leverage that shareholder power to be able to make those calls for change. Because if we do that, imagine if all of us went to shareholder meetings, if all of us started becoming activists as shareholders. All you need is one share. And that's what it takes to get started. If you do that, you'll be amazed at what we can do to really move the needle.
Love that. Thank you for that, Sid. Yeah. All right. Here's what we're going to do. So we got two questions lined up, one in the back, one over here. So here's what we're going to do. Questions asked. I'm going to ask one panelist to respond. If you have a passion for that answer and you want to give it to a second one, we got 10 minutes. We'll get through a couple of questions. Does that sound fair? All right, outstanding. All right, in the back. Press. You got to press your button. You see it? Okay.
My 55 years that the C-suite understands is called cash. As Richard Edelman said this morning, that we can vote every second, every time we make a decision with our pockets. But the reality is that for years and years, and we have Murgia in the morning, and I've been in this for all my life because I believe if we don't serve, we can't. El que no vive para servir, no sirve para vivir. So that's my motto, basically, under my mom. So what I am calling upon here is that we need to get money into our communities. This is a very powerful group of influencers, but for that reason, today I announced the United States Hispanic Supplier Diversity Council. For years and years, we haven't had a chance in the manufacturing, in the business of art. So it's time for us to demand certification at a right level and bring money. So my question is real quick.
Thank you.
Is Nina, tell us a little bit about your path to where you got. You started in the kitchen, but how did you get to where you're at? So empower us with that.
Happy to. I am a living, breathing example of the opportunities that are available in this country for entrepreneurs and for immigrants. And this is the reason why I feel like I should tell my story. 2 seconds. Quite frankly, I'm an immigrant, came to this country. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, so one could say I didn't know any better. Like most Hispanics, and if you look at the data, entrepreneurship is a vehicle for economic mobility for many of us. If you look at the McKinsey study that came out in corporate America, at least for Latinas are the 1%ers in the boardroom, in the C-suite, in the SVP, in the VP, in the VP, all the way down to the directors. We have to attack that. And we can do that by advocating for business and advocating at the most senior level. So that's an issue that we have to do. For me, I didn't grow up seeing anybody work in corporate America. My mother, my father, my tío, my tía, they were all entrepreneurs. And so I became an entrepreneur by the grace of God in the right industry, in the technology industry. And like many companies, I started my company not to make money. I started it to make a difference for my family. That family now includes hundreds of people today. And as I've traveled in my entrepreneurship journey in the last 23 years, I've learned a lot of things. Number one, it's incumbent upon us as entrepreneurs to continue to educate ourselves on how to run a business, because how we run a $1 million business is not the same we run a 10 million or a 100 million or a $1 billion business. So we need to reach out to organizations that are available to us, the councils, the chambers, to educate us, to meet people that look like us and that have climbed that mountain before. The second is we need to understand how business is made. For me, we don't operate in the federal government. I needed to study how corporations, what is the recipe, how do I get involved? And then the third is actually you have to be really good at what you do. And that's a really important trait, because we can't do business with corporations unless we really can provide value and do well. So I don't want to take up a tremendous amount of time. All I can say is that I am a living, breathing example of what is possible. And for that reason, I plan to dedicate everything that I do in the advocacy level to make sure I'm teaching, inspiring, and showing entrepreneurs the recipe and the way so they can do the same.
Nina, can I say something? Nina's being very, very humble, because many of you don't know this, but Nina Vaca made history when she became the first Latina-owned business to cross the $1 billion revenue marker. That's never happened before. She's being very, very humble. So just so you know the caliber of her success. So thank you.
I was going to say, yeah.
Oh, yes.
We got $2 billion business, Latina entrepreneurs up here.
Sure, go ahead.
So the question is this. I wonder if there is an organization out there, I always dream of that, that recognizes community leaders or leaders in business. I'm going to use me as an example because for the lack of anyone, that can advocate for we, which is the younger generation, or leaders like us in companies, by sending a letter and saying, you have a leader in your company who we feel you need to progress. What are you doing for them? For any of us in corporate. Like, I feel like yes, there are organizations like Hispanic, which I belong. We try to open the doors, we try to get sponsors, but there are corporations that are looking at people that are already leaders in corporations and saying, she's a leader, call them out and say, what are you doing for her? Or sit on the board. So does anybody have any strategy? Do you know of an organization that does that?
So I think there's a few, and a lot of the leaders are in this room right here, right? So Alpha, ACER, ACE, Prospanica, SHIP do that, I think, pretty well. And one of the things that I love about what this is, I'll give you an example. A bunch of us have been trying to get together for a while, and we literally got together here and planned our first session that we've been trying to plan for a year. This brings us together to make sure that we're doing it in an efficient way, right? So I think the answer is yes. This brings us together to make sure that we are making sure that we're all aware of how to do that. So that's my thought for it. I'm going to jump to the next one. One more, and then we're going to have closing words from everybody, last comment. So one more in the back over there. Yep.
Hola. My name is Beatriz Ayala. I'm the founder of Musicasa and from Puerto Rico originally. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. And here's my question. The Lean In organization shared with us 2 months ago that the biggest gap in corporate America in terms of gender doesn't come at the C level, it comes at the first promotion level, right? So the biggest gender gap and the reason why women are not getting more opportunities at management is because the first moment of promotion is not happening. I can't help but wonder if there are some similarities to that in terms of Hispanics, and if there's such a thing as a Hispanic gap in terms of getting that first promotion in order to actually get into the C-suite. Because if you can't get into the C-suite if you're not getting the promotion, right?
Thank you. Well, thanks for the question. We partnered up with McKinsey, and McKinsey and Lean In did the study looking at women in corporate America, and the pipeline showed that on the entry level positions you had a population employees that looked very diverse, just like the demographics of the U.S. And as that pipeline led to the C-level, for example, white men started at 30% of entry levels, and by the time you got into the C-suite, they were in the mid to high 60s. So how does that happen? Of course, and then we saw the reverse happen with women and women of color. So one of the interesting things that McKinsey did was take a look at that report for Latinas. And one of the things that they found was that there's a lot of misconceptions about Latinas because they interviewed, it was a survey about 230 some companies, and they looked at the demographics of the companies, and they also interviewed the women. And the misconception is that, we care so much about family that we care more about wanting to be at home or fall out of the pipeline because of other family concerns. But in fact, when they ask the women, Latinas are very much interested in advancement, very much interested in what's next, and very motivated and asking for those opportunities. So one of the things, the biggest factor, and we'll ask them to dig deeper next time, is the perception that others have of us that's keeping us from really what our potential is. Because Latinas and Latinos are absolutely looking for that next opportunity, and others are saying, and the misconception is that we're not interested in that next opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Esther. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to close it out with a final word. Each of our panelists, what parting wisdom would you like to give? Esther, we'll start with you on the end, and we will work our way down, if that's okay.
Super quick. This is a room full of folks. It's time that we not just point the finger at issues and problems, oh, we have awful numbers on corporate boards. It's about what we're doing about it. And that's what we are, and all of us here. We're here today because we want to do something about it.
2 words: be bold. Be bold on your teams. Be bold in the boardroom. If you're on the boardroom, be bold. Stand in your space.
My view is about knowledge, about education. We got to get educated. It is very important. That's how I actually went through 27 years working at NASA, training astronauts, and then now as the vice president for the University of Houston Clear Lake. It's because of I educated myself, I asked questions, I challenged the system constantly, I got good mentors, and was able to try to look for them. So we are powerful. We can do anything we want. The sky is the limit, literally.
I would say be courageous. Seek out opportunities to lead. I attended a luncheon earlier today where I knew nobody. I knew very few people. I knew one person in the room, and I thought to myself, that uncomfortable feeling where you're one of 2 Latinas in the room, I knew I was in the right room. I need you to go out there and look for opportunities to lead, to be proud to be of the only Hispanic there. Just make sure that you're leading the way, because we're living in some unprecedented times where this country is recognizing that if you're not related to a Latino, you soon will be.
That was awesome. Yeah. My closing thoughts are real simple. Number one, it's not about assimilation, it's about acculturation. Corporations must acculturate to us, not us assimilating to an existing corporate culture. Number 2 is that if you don't get invited to the table, I think someone said it earlier, just bring the chair and sit at the table. And then you'll be surprised. They'll tell you, hey, you're here, you may as well stay. And then thirdly, that what we're doing here is so empowering. We must continue to continue to collaborate. And I've always been a believer that when you plan to achieve, but you dare to exceed, then great results you will see. So thank you.
Again, there you go. Okay, wow. I mean, I would just say be at the table. Surround yourself with people that know more than you. Who would have thought that myself? I came here to America when I was 13, not knowing a word of English, from El Salvador because of a civil war. Would now be the first Latina in the waste management industry, making millions, contributing millions of dollars to this country, and now creating the jobs of the future, working with technology. And it is about being present. Like Nina said, don't feel uncomfortable when you get these invitations. I got invited to be at the White House to be recognized for Hispanic heritage. And I was there at the table. What came out after that, I've been appointed to serve on the board for the Smithsonian. And then, follow with that one, was selected to be one of the 15 council members for Women Business Council in the United States, one of them. So after that visit, so it's always surround yourself with the great people. Don't be afraid to be at the table, and always, do things with your heart. Just follow your passion and be true to yourself, and anything else follows.
Big round of applause for all of our panelists, for Maria, Sid, Nina, Evelyn, Michelle, Esther. Thank you for an amazing panel.
What an incredible panel. Thank you so very much. I heard a number of correlations of the things that we've heard this morning when we were in the education panel and the financial inclusion panel. Did you get that? Did you get about being intentional and also about the partnerships that we can start creating with our allies, with corporate America and others, so that we can have mentorship, internships, scholarships, and apprenticeships. So it is actually great to start seeing how it all flows together. It is all about our collaboration. I know that this is lovely. We have to move you out from the panel so we can get... the panel will stay there after we finish. So this is 2020. Okay, we really need to go. 2020 is an incredibly important year. Why? Because it's election year. And for that, civic engagement, I think, is, if not, one of the most important things that we have all to act upon. And for that, I'm very grateful for the next panel. Please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Claudia, for that wonderful introduction. I'm joined here by Maria Teresa Kumar from Voto Latino and Delia de la Barra, SVP of Development and Strategic. Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. There you go. Is that better, everyone? Hi, I'm Leonora Ayala from NBC News and MSNBC. And I'm joined here by two incredible women who are on the ground every day. Or most days, especially leading up to 2020, to make sure that we're all participating and engaging in our civic duty. So please join me in welcoming Maria Teresa Kumar and Delia de la Barra. We're going to pull up some stats and then go through them fairly quickly. We'll just get right to it because I know we have a couple of minutes. So the Pew Research Center estimates there are a record 32 million Latinos are projected to be eligible to vote in 2020. So, and that's up about more or less 5 million from 2016. Can you all paint a picture for us going into 2020? Where is the Latino vote? What are some of the challenges going into this big election year?
Well, I'll just add a little bit to that. One of the things we do know is that in the last election, the 2018 election, we had about 60% of the registered voters turn out to vote. Is it still low? Okay, there we go. Now I can hear myself. Thank you. 60% of registered Latinos turned out to vote. I'm sorry, of the registered Latinos, 83% who were registered turned out to vote. Now, there's a gap, and we know there's a gap of folks that we want to make sure are registered to vote, because we still don't have 100% of eligible Latinos registered to vote. But it's important to note that when we are registered, we have a very high voter turnout rate. And so that's one of the key things that both Voto Latino and Unidos US and many organizations that we work closely with are focused on in 2020 is registering more Latinos to vote, because we know the power and the influence it has on elections. With 2018, and I'm talking a little bit about what just happened to give us some inspiration about what can happen in 2020. So in 2018, we know we elected one of the most diverse members of Congress to Washington, D.C., including the first 2 Latinas from the state of Texas. We had high turnout rate in the Latino community. It's been increasing, and we need to continue to grow that. And we'll talk a little bit more about what you can do about that at the end. But there's hope and inspiration in the 2018 numbers. And in 2020, there are some challenges that our community is facing. We did not have the same level of exacerbated fear of cases of discrimination, of the rights that that have protected our opportunity to vote, our right to vote around the country. Those things are being eroded, and so there are challenges that we have to overcome in states around the country. But there is also a lot of opportunity in the issues that are important to our community. We just this panel before and throughout the day, we've been talking about each of us and our opportunity to pursue our own American dream, and that's kind of what's at stake this year and in the elections, is our opportunity to pursue our American dream, to have the opportunity that healthcare, access to quality healthcare, access to quality education, economic opportunity, all of that is at stake, and that's what we should be. It should be inspiring and motivating us to do what we can, whether we're registered or whether we're registered or know people who need to be registered. We all have an ability to contribute to that and to make sure we turn out.
Maria Teresa, I heard some staggering numbers about just the number of people that are not registered. Talk a little bit about the opportunity there and the challenge.
First of all, how many people here are registered to vote? How many of you know people who are not registered to vote? Almost a third. When we say that the election that's coming up is going to be the most consequential, most important election of our lifetime, it's not a joke. And the fact that the majority of the folks in this room are registered, you guys get it. 2016, we had an individual come down the stairs and say that the reason that the country was a mess was because of criminals and rapists. And I say that because it's one of the things that hurt me the most. Atrevido. Atrevido porque al mismo tiempo, he is employing undocumented labor. He is employing to make money off the back and sweat of our aspirations, our dreams, and our children's dreams. So if we are not straight and have a conversation of where we are in our opportunity, lo van a seguir haciendo, sin respeto. I had the opportunity to go down to El Paso. I witnessed the shelters. I spoke to a 19-year-old sister who had crossed the border with her brother, who was 13 years old, and she was hoping to save enough money to get him out of an Arizona shelter. She hadn't seen him in 9 months. But she had to be able to prove to the judge that she could actually earn enough money for a one-bedroom apartment. What's that possibility? My family came to this country because we left a broken country. We know what broken looks like, and it's because of the sweat and sacrifice of them, of why we do the work that we do. At Voto Latino last year, we registered 200,000 people, 15% of all Texans. When people say that the community is not paying attention, that's not right. Our biggest challenge is to get the word out. Our biggest challenge is to make sure that we're angry with promise. Our biggest challenge is to demand respeto because our families came here not because we came out with our hands in our hats and asking for money. We're building this country every single day. Our biggest challenge in the Latino community is a voter registration gap, because when our families register, we vote. And that's what they're afraid of. The fact that in Texas we had someone so cowardly jump into their car and drive 10 hours to one of the safest cities in the country and shoot at us was to send a message that none of us should feel safe. The stakes are not small. In his manifesto, he directly said that he was trying to stop the Mexican invasion and to prevent the voting bloc of the Latino community. That was directly from his manifesto. They see our power. For the very first time, Latinos are going to be the second largest group of Americans. We need to register to vote. We have 15 million Latinos that are unregistered. Of those 15 million, 10 million are under the age of 34. But this is the opportunity. 4 million of those have turned 18, and they remember when a president was going down an escalator telling that their families were criminals and rapists. Our community is hungry, they're angry, and they're ready. And so in your perch that you are, what we need you to do is to make sure that you are encouraging people to participate. And we could talk a little bit about that, but I have to tell you that I've been doing this for a long time. And I do it because I love my family, I love the power of who they have been able to demonstrate, but also because right now we demand respeto. That's all we're asking for.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. And talking about power, the U.S. Hispanic population reached 59.9 million in 2018. That's up almost 49% since 2008. That's a huge jump. And this makes Hispanics the nation's second fastest growing racial or ethnic group after Asian Americans. And Hispanics made up 18% of the U.S. population in 2018, up 5% from 1970. Talk about, you hinted a little bit about this, but I want to talk about the silver lining. Like, there's a lot of silver lining here. What are the opportunities? What can we do? What are your organizations doing to get people to get out the vote?
Yeah, I think I'll try to be very brief this time. I have to say that 10 years ago, the Latino community would not have been ready for where we are today. We would not have been because the majority of whites are 54 years old. The majority of Latinos are 19 years old. We have a voting population that's eager, young, and hungry, number one. Number two, 10 years ago, we didn't have you all in decision-making positions. We didn't. You now, Voto Latino, and I want to give a special shout out to a former employee of Voto Latino who created National Voter Registration Day. Through your organizations, next September, you can send out an email to all of your affiliates and encourage them to register to vote. Because of National Voter Registration Day, we've registered close to 2 million folks in the last 4 years. It's a national holiday. It's amazing. And it's in partnership with over 900 organizations, so it's not small. Lastly, you could also recognize that the reason that the Latino community is so far behind is that we're not investing in ourselves. In the last election, we had roughly, it was a $2 billion election. Unidos, Voto Latino, and other organizations collectively received less than $11 million to do the work that needs to happen. Shame on us that we're expecting other people to build our political power. Shame on us. Because if every Latino contributed $1, that's $60 million. That's 6 times more than anybody has ever invested in the Latino community. And that is time for us to look into our mirror and say, are we going to invest in Unidos? Are we going to invest in Voto Latino? Are we going to invest in MALDEF so that when people come knocking on our door on our civil rights, whether or not we're actually going to stand up for ourselves? And finally, I would encourage you guys to download VoterPal. VoterPal allows us to close the voter registration gap by registering our friends and our family. It was named by the App Store as one of the top 4 political apps of last year, and we've doubled down. It's in English and Spanish. If folks are interested in partnership with Voto Latino, we have actually have $1 million investment with Steve Madden that we recently announced, and we're also going into stores with Zoomies, which target young Latinos to basically own their moment and own their voice. And I'll see you guys at the polls. And for more information, you can go to MTK, that's my initials, MTK at votolatino.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I want to give Delia a chance to talk a little bit about your call to action and solutions going forward. We are in the home stretch here of our panel and the 2020 election.
Sure. One of the things I know we talked about before was that the Latino population is more than half of it is in Florida, California, Texas. as Maria Teresa mentioned, we have to invest in ourselves, and one of the things Unidos US is doing is investing in going much deeper this year in our voter engagement and voter registration work, specifically in those states, plus Arizona and Nevada, doing both a combination of digital voter outreach and voter engagement, as well as on-the-ground canvassing, particularly in Florida, and now expanding that to Texas. And one of the things I think we know is how hard it has been to invest in voter registration in Texas to get the resources to really do that on the ground. So we're actually pairing our Florida on-the-ground canvassing efforts and doing some trainings throughout Texas to invest ourselves in that, and then hopefully bring in some other partners who can complement that effort. But that'll be really important. Because of the size of the Latino population and the engagement, and how that plays out to local elections too. It's not just about the presidential election. It's also about the city council elections, the school boards, the state house, the governor's elections that are happening. Those are important, and those have a lot of a play at the local level. So that will be very important. It is important to have all of you invest. It's also important to make sure that in addition to voter registration and voter education, the issues that are important to our community are the issues we're amplifying through all the different platforms we have, whether that's as leaders of your employee resource groups, as heads of your own companies, in your kids at the PTA, at the school board, at your city council, on the boards that you are a part of and that you serve in the community engagement work you all do. Those are all important platforms to raise conversation around the issues that are important that will have an impact on the Latino community in this coming election. So we have a 2020 issues platform that's available for downloading on our website if you want to use that as a guide and share that. If you'd like to speak with any of our team members to talk about how you can have that conversation with your networks, we're available. I encourage you to follow, obviously, Maria Teresa on Twitter and our CEO, you heard from her this morning, Janet Murguia, on Twitter, to see how they're amplifying the issues to have conversation to make sure that we're standing up for our community and participating actively in the vote, but it's also going to be important to participate actively in the census as well.
Well, thank you, Delia. Thank you, Maria. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but this was a great, quick synopsis on how you all can go back, open up your purse strings and help out and motivate yourselves to get the vote out. And so I would encourage you as a journalist to do your research and your homework and get engaged on the issues. Thank you again to Maria and Delia. Thank you, Claudia, for the platform.
Thank you so much. Can I just ask a question? What is the deadline for registration? Like there's a timeline, right, that we have to follow?
If you go to
Mike.
If you go to votolatino.org and type in your address, we will tell you. Each state has a very different deadline.
Different data.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But for Voto Latino, we're going to register 500,000 folks, and we're starting our voter registration efforts January 1. 77% of the people we register vote. We do it well. We need your help.
Thank you so very much. I think the access is that way. We're coming actually to the end. We just have one last keynote speaker, but I want to encourage all of you not only to think about like what's at stake here and the responsibility that we have to vote and to participate in the census, but also come tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have a lot of incredible insights. Jesse Jackson, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, is going to be here tomorrow talking to us about lessons learned from the African American community. We have a panel with Desmond Child, the creator of Despacito, talking about how culture is going to be, is affecting our community and how can we use it more. Hispanics in Tech, a lot of us have been talking about that. We're going to have a panel about that, and obviously we're going to have a workshop about the Hispanic Star and how to bring it to life and how can you contribute, and we're going to be prescriptive about that. So I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring your badges. And to close the day today, I would like to welcome the leader of one of the most respected civil rights organizations in the country. A dear friend, Jonathan Greenblatt, is an accomplished entrepreneur and leader. He runs the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League. And he's going to be sharing with us some of the thinking, some of the thoughts, some of the lessons learned, the do's and the don'ts that they have learned through the Jewish activation, through the Jewish construction and history about like unification, so that we as Hispanics can learn from everyone and from the best. And also, how can we partner with like groups like the Jewish community, so that we can become stronger, but also with stronger allies. So please welcome the last keynote of the day, Jonathan Greenblatt.
Thank you, Claudia. Is this on? Yeah. Thank you, Claudia. I appreciate the nice introduction. I realize I'm your last speaker before you get drinks in Midtown Manhattan. So I'm going to try to be brief. But really, there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say because we're here today in one of the most diverse cities in America, really the entire world, that's populated by such a rich tapestry of people speaking different languages and different faiths. Unfortunately, we're here today at a time when there are those in this country, when there are those in leadership positions who don't see this diversity as a virtue, who don't see this rich tapestry for the extraordinary asset that it is. You know, Maria Teresa talked about it a few moments ago. We all remember what happened in El Paso this past summer. We all remember, I'm sure, where we were on that day when you opened your phone or you turned on the television and you read about this man, who I won't dignify by mentioning his name, who drove 10 hours with the intent to murder as many Latino people as possible. And as he wrote in his manifesto that he posted just minutes before he began his rampage, he wanted to stop what he called the, quote, Hispanic invasion of Texas. The attack in El Paso was the deadliest white supremacist crime in this country in 50 years. But it didn't happen in a vacuum. In fact, according to the data just released by the FBI, anti-Hispanic hate crimes increased 14% in 2018. That's the third straight year of an increase in crimes directed against Latinos. And these alarming trends should be of concern to everyone. Since the ADL was founded in 1913, our mission has been to, quote, stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment to all. Our founders knew 106 years ago that if one group is not welcomed in our society, then no group is safe. They believed that the best way to defend Jews in America is to defend all people in America. And those words, that mission statement, hasn't changed one iota in 100 years. And as a Jewish civil rights organization, I need to say, as I stand here today, that we have deep ties to the Latino community because you are us. Look, there are millions of Jews of color in this country, in the world, and hundreds of thousands of Latino Jews. And I am proud of the fact that I have Latino Jews on my staff. I have Latino Jews on my executive team. I have a Latino Jew on my board of directors. So I'm not talking to you today as someone who thinks in some abstract sort of way. I am one of you. We are all us. We are all in this together. So let's keep that in mind, because in the same 12-month period that we saw that attack in El Paso, the largest terror attack against Latinos in U.S. history, we also saw the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in American history at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And what links these two attacks is not just the shared horror or the mutual loss of life, but that both of these murderers were inspired and driven by the worldview that saw immigrants as others, that saw people from beyond this country as invaders. They had linked their white supremacist ideology to anti-immigrant hate. And we've got to keep in mind that this didn't happen in isolation. You know, there's always been anti-immigrant fervor as they're trying to keep out people from South America and Central America today. So they once tried to keep out Jews. So they once tried to keep out Italians and Irish. I could go on. What's different is this anti-immigrant fervor that had been pushed into the shadows has now burst into the center of the conversation. And we are living and enduring one of the most anti-immigrant administrations in the history of this country. And that's a long time. That's 240 some odd years that has pursued a policy of closing our doors to the most vulnerable, to the most needy, using rhetoric that is filled with nothing short of hate. The president has referred to immigrants and refugees, again, as invaders. And at a rally in October of last year in Texas, he told the crowd that immigrants, quote, carve you up with a knife. And the day before the El Paso massacre, the governor of Texas used anti-immigrant fears to motivate his donors. In a fundraising email, he reportedly called on people to defend Texas now and to take matters into our own hands to stop undocumented immigrants from crossing into the border. Look, make no mistake, white supremacy and violent extremism is the enemy of us all. It is one of the most pressing threats of our time. From African-American churchgoers in Charleston to Sikh worshipers in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, to Jews in Pittsburgh, to the Muslims in Christchurch, to the Latino community in El Paso. Every marginalized community in this country seems to be under siege, literally under attack. And the white supremacist ideology that's motivating those attacks is only indiscriminate in the way that it discriminates. So how do we address this growing threat? Well, it endangers us all, and I deeply believe, as did the founders of ADL, that we've got to work through coalitions. We've got to collaborate on programs and innovate new policies, new initiatives, so that we can raise the awareness of hate and help people respond effectively. Let me give you an example. Thanks to a partnership that we created with the Mexican Foreign Ministry in the last 2+ years, ADL experts have trained, ready for this, more than 2,500 consular officers and community leaders in 50 cities across the country that have a Mexican consulate, and taught these Mexican consular officials how to identify and respond to victims of hate. Why did we do this? Because Mexican nationals and legal residents of this country experienced such a surge of hate crimes in 2017 after the election, but they were afraid to go to the authorities. Parents whose children were bullied in school were afraid to go to the principal. People whose elderly parents were harassed on the street were afraid to go to the authorities. Store owners whose businesses were vandalized were afraid to go to the police. So where did they go? To Mexican consulates to say, help my child who was bullied. Can you help my parents who were harassed? Can you help me with my business? And the Mexican consulate, they didn't know what to do because this isn't their job. And it shouldn't be in America in the 21st century. And so they came to us because we do hate crimes. And I'm proud of the fact that, like I said, more than 2,500 Mexican consular officials now know how to help those people, now to help how to aid them when they are victimized, when they are marginalized, because it's not right. We've also given them training in bullying and cyberbullying. And we launched with the Mexican Foreign Ministry a campaign on social media we call Denuncia el Odio, to raise awareness among the Mexican immigrant community in the U.S. of the value and importance of reporting these hate crimes. And in response to the attacks in El Paso, I reached out to my friends Janet Murguia and Cindy Benavides, and I'm incredibly proud that we now have an MOU with Unidos and LULAC to empower and enable them to respond effectively as well. Training and reporting are critical into fighting hate, but we also believe in bringing communities together. Let me give you one other example. There have been a series of brutal anti-Semitic attacks on the rise in Brooklyn. Literally, about 250 have taken place this year alone. Much of this violence arises from the mistrust and misunderstanding in those communities that goes back decades, where communities of color and the Jewish community are at odds. So we're addressing this problem not just by trying to eradicate anti-Semitism, but by trying to eradicate all bigotry. We've expanded our educational program, No Place for Hate, that's helped to promote tolerance in over 1,700 public schools nationwide the past 20 years. And thanks to additional funding, we're working now to partner with 40 schools in Brooklyn. We're going to reach an additional 10,000 kids in Brooklyn's public schools and its Jewish private schools. Because, you know, you can't arrest your way out of anti-Semitism. You can't incarcerate your way out of hate. You have got to change hearts and minds. But that hard work at the local level matters, but it's not enough. We need lawmakers to do more. We've called on Congress to pass something called the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act that would require federal law enforcement agencies to regularly assess right-wing extremist threats, which they don't do now. That would force them to assist state and local law enforcement to reduce these threats. And we want Congress to immediately pass the No Hate Act to improve the reporting of hate crimes. Look, I know there's a long road ahead, but I am optimistic. Despite the rise of hate that I'm telling you about and the work that must happen, I deeply believe in the good of America, and I can see the passion and equality for everyone here. I sat there and listened earlier and heard the remarkable speakers who were here earlier. And look, that's why I felt, where's Claudia? That's why I felt it was so important for me to be here when she asked me to be a part of this first and ever Hispanic Leadership Conference. Because you see, we're all in this together. It doesn't matter what language you speak or where you're from or how you pray or who you love. As the grandson of immigrants, as the husband of a refugee, I believe in an America where those who are perceived as different are not the targets of discrimination or threats, but an America where we are all welcomed as equals and treated with the dignity and equality that we deserve, that is enshrined in our Constitution, and that should be our God-given right. But I will tell you this, I only think we're going to get there. I only think we're going to realize that American dream if we build it, and if we build it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're going to open up the floor for you. I'm going to invite our co-host Tracy, if you don't mind, Maria, and Dr. Juan, if you don't mind just coming here on stage. We want to just like, if you don't mind, just like coming here. And Maria, where's Maria? Yes, please come, our co-host, and Dr. Juan Andrade, who's coming here. We're going to open it up for you for 5 minutes. I know that we're like about to wrap up, but we want to allow the leadership to respond to some of your comments. And when they're coming here, what a day. What a day. What a day. We have, I loved our 7 young Hispanic stars. Didn't you? Yes, listening to their stories. I love that we were able to launch the platform, the Hispanic Star, that is like a platform to showcase the contributions of Hispanics. It's inclusive. It's not about we or them. It's about all of us, and it's positive. And so I think that what I would like to do is just like get the mics for the co-host here. I'm waiting for Dr. Juan. Venga para acá. Dr. Juan. I'm going to, these are our co-hosts. First of all, can we give our co-host and our leadership an incredible round of applause for being here and making this happen? I'm going to start just by asking Tracy for your, closing words for today, then Maria, Dr. Juan, and then we're going to open it up. Sounds good?
Yeah. I just have 3 quick things. First, thank you to everyone that was here today. I mean, it's obviously a time commitment and take people away from their families, away from their businesses. So thank you for all being here today. I know I learned a ton today, and I think the last thing is just that there's so much obvious, excellent work happening in so many small ways, small, medium, and I guess large ways as well around the country. But there's clearly going to be much more of an impact if there's a collective power, which I think, Claudia, is what you're trying to do. If all of those efforts were a bit unified together, I think the results would be absolutely tremendous very, very quickly. I don't think it will actually take all that long because the passion that's already existing here today, that coming together is sure to get us where we want to go. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Maria?
Wow, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, thank you for what you're doing. I'm giving your time, life, and everything to this. This is amazing. So give her an applause, please. Thank you. Thank you. And for me, when she calls, no matter if I'm in India or if I'm in Switzerland or in Russia, I respond because this lady is doing amazing things. And with all of you, I'm here. Let's pass it on. Let's be the voice. Let's move this together. It's a movement. Let's make this happen. And so with that, thank you for what you're doing here today. I learned a lot myself, and I made great connections. This is fabulous. So thank you again for giving us time here today, and thank you again, all of you.
Well, I'll be brief, no matter how long it takes. I'll be brief. But just to reiterate, what's already been said, but I guess they left it to me to be the last one to say it. Everything that has been said about Claudia probably has been said, but good God, let me tell you a personal story. Just 6 months ago, I was in the jaws of death. I knew my days were over. I knew my career was over. I knew my life was over. I made my peace, and that was Easter Sunday. And I said, it's over, and I just passed out with the pain that I was feeling. And the next day, I found myself at the gates of heaven, where I was met by God Himself, who kind of looked pleased a little bit, glad to see me, but he had a little problem. He said, I'm not done with you yet. You need to go back. Your work is not done. Your life is not over. I am not done with you. You have more work to do. Bueno, me sentí un poco triste, ¿no? Porque yo ya tenía la esperanza de estar en la eternidad. De esta lucha que he peleado ya 50 años y ya se habían vencido. The work wasn't done yet, but I had done what I could. And I didn't know what I was going to do, what else God had in mind for me to do on my way back from heaven. It's a long way from here, by the way. I had all night to think about it. But it made sense, and the clarity that was missing for a while there, it just kind of began to crystallize a little bit. And today was that moment when I came to grips with what it was that God had in mind for me to tell me that my work was not done. Is because of what this young lady is doing. Because I thought, what am I going to do? And, you know, I thought I had done what I could do. But yes, I had built things, but what else could I do? Help Claudia with what she is trying to do. That's what it is. I don't have to do all the heavy lifting anymore. You know, I don't have to put my shoulder to the wheel anymore. I just get behind that wagon and push and push. And it's easier for me because all I have to do is lean forward. You know, I'm not the one doing all the heavy lifting, but Claudia, thank God for you. And thank God for all y'all that are here today. Because together we can get this done. Together, sí se puede. Sí se puede. Together we can get this done. This is not over yet. And the world is going to be changed because what is happening here today. Thank you all very much. Thank Claudia for her leadership and inspiration. Yes, we can. Sí se puede. They cut it off. Sí se puede. Right?
Anyone wants to respond to that? Okay. So I don't think that anyone could I think that we just have to recognize you. You are literally the reason why all of us are here. And I get so moved because you're a legend standing here, and we stand, all of us, on your shoulder, Dr. Juan Andrade. Thank you so much. I can't speak anymore. See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.